Ladies and gentlemen, I want to invite you, thank you for coming to our January 9th Planning Commission meeting here for Placer County, and if you'll all join me, we'll commence with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kathy, if you'll commence with the roll call, please.
Sure. Mr. Nader? Here. Mr. Moss? Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Ricucci?
Here.
Mr. Denayo?
Here.
Mr. Sevison?
Present.
Mr. Gray?
Just barely.
Mr. Gray?
Yeah.
Thank Mr. Severson for designing to join us today. And next we'll hear a report from our planning directors. Today will be, Crystal. I can't see that far, Crystal.
Good morning, Crystal Jacobson with Planning Services Division, and I'm filling in as the planning director for today. Paul, as you know, has transitioned onto Tahoe, so he's providing leadership in our Tahoe office. Just want to let you know our January 23rd Planning Commission hearing has been canceled, and so your next hearing will be scheduled for February 13th. And then also let you know that we did have an appeal on the Belcara project that you heard. I believe you heard that on the 12th of December, and so that has been appealed to our board. As far as board hearings go, we did have one CDRA item that was heard on the 7th, January 7th. It was a proposal for an interim urgency ordinance temporarily prohibiting certain uses in the town centers of the Tahoe Basin. However, that item was tabled by our board and will be heard at their January 21st Tahoe meeting. And I don't believe there are any other items that will be presented on the 21st, except for a brief summary of all, kind of the status of all of our Tahoe projects will be presented on the 21st. So that's...
Crystal, what was the subject that the Tahoe meeting proposition was boarded?
The interim ordinance, it was prohibiting certain uses within the town centers of Tahoe City, Kings Beach, and North State Line.
Certain usages of what?
Certain uses include, it would include, if the board supports it, hospitals, daycare centers, preschools, churches, schools, including business and vocational, college, kindergarten through secondary, animal husbandry services, collection stations, single-family residences, service stations, auto repair and services, and contract construction services. And so those would be, the prohibition would be temporary until the community plan update was complete so that we could appropriately address those types of land uses within the town centers. And so it would prohibit them within the existing community plan areas of the Tahoe City Community Plan, and the Kings Beach Community Plan, and the North State Line Community Plan. So those existing community plan boundaries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
Any questions?
Crystal, are you going to be our planning director?
No, just for today. I'm just acting for the morning, yes.
Okay.
So.
Well, in that case, you're relieved of the duty.
Okay, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, now I'm going to open up the meeting to anyone who would care to address us on any item not on the agenda today. And seeing nobody rush forward, we'll close that and come to the most important part of today's meeting, my relinquishing this chair. I believe we need a vote.
Yeah, I would make a motion that we, we nominate Larry Sivison to be our new chairman, and Ken Denayo to be the vice chairman, and Richard Ricucci to be the secretary. And I was kind of hoping that we'd be able to nominate Larry Sivison in absentia, but he showed up. So that's my motion.
We have a motion and a second and a new rule, so we will have a voice roll call, I believe, on the vote.
Mr. Nader? Mr. Moss? Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Rakucci?
Yes.
Mr. Denayo?
Yes.
Mr. Fevison? Mr. Gray?
Definitely. Well, with that vote in line, I'll take your chair if you'll take this one.
Well, I got all this stuff over here.
Yeah, I'll help you move it.
He's been trying to get one more full meeting out of you.
And I really do miss this part.
Good job, Nick. You really meant it today, didn't you? Everything's going just fine, except I lost my glasses somewhere between here and my car.
Nice excuse, but it won't be acceptable.
Well, we'll get started anyway. Maybe I'll sneak out. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome. Ooh, what was that? The first item appears to be the vesting tentative map. Tentative subdivision map, mayor subdivisions, and I guess Roy's going to enlighten us on this project. Good morning, Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant, Artisan California LLC, is requesting approval of a vesting tentative subdivision map to allow a 7-lot, single-family residential subdivision on a 7.3-acre site in Granite Bay. The property at 9755 Sierra College Boulevard is located on the east side of Sierra College Boulevard, approximately 1,150 feet south of the intersection of Old Auburn Road and Sierra College Boulevard in the Granite Bay area, and the property is highlighted in yellow and 7.3 acres. To the east, this is the color of, this is the city of Roseville, and then to the west and north of Old Auburn Road is unincorporated part of Placer County. The zoning is residential, single-family, combining agriculture with a minimum building site of 40,000 square feet. And this is the vesting tentative map. This project is consistent with the Granite Bay Community Plan land use category of rural low-density residential, and the proposed project is consistent with existing and anticipated development in the surrounding neighborhood. Within the larger area surrounding the project, subdivisions and parcel maps with comparable lot sizes and design goals have been approved by the county. And our recommendation is from the Development Review Committee that the Planning Commission, number one, adopt the mitigated negative declaration and the mitigation monitoring program for the subdivision, and also approve the vesting tentative subdivision map subject to the findings and recommended conditions in the staff report. And if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Any questions of Roy?
Well, I may have
One?
just a couple of detailed type
Oh,
things.
go ahead.
Oh, somebody else
No,
was
go
wishing to
ahead.
add to? Okay. Yeah, Roy, the ingress and egress, I was a little confused over that as far as the future of Sierra College Boulevard. It appears that it's a 4-lane road now without a island in the center. And there's apparently the option for a 3rd lane in there someplace. Is that, maybe you could explain it.
I think I'd need to defer to engineering and surveying Sarah Gilmore.
Thank you, Sarah Gilmore, Engineering and Surveying. What exists out there right now, I don't have the dimensions memorized, but it is 2 lanes in each direction for a total of 4 lanes. There is a fairly wide median that exists right now, so this is going to be right in, right out only. What is shown in the community plan for the future ultimate is going to be 3 lanes in each direction for a total of 6 lanes. And the driveway is being constructed far enough back to allow for those 3 lanes plus a shoulder.
So then in the future, when people exit the subdivision going to the east, or no, I guess the south, right? They'll have to turn right and then go down and do a U-turn to get going the other direction?
Correct.
And there'll be a median strip in the future?
There is already a median strip and it will remain.
Did you say there will be, or there,
There already is.
is it just a lines, or is?
No, it's a treed, landscaped, pretty substantial
Okay,
median.
okay. Okay, that answers that question. And then, a while back, we looked at the subdivision just to the south. And at any rate, I guess what I was wondering is, we're talking about some dirt berms as sound barriers. And so
Yes.
it's granite meadows to the south. And I can't remember for sure, is that the same type of a structure that they used for granite meadows as a sound barrier?
Actually, these two to the south, there's two different parcel maps
Uh-huh.
versus a subdivision done separately. And they did put in a berm at the front of each of the lots that are next to Sierra College Boulevard, and that's the same with this. A noise study was done and determined, I'll go back to this one, on lots 1 here and 7, this area right close to, closer to Sierra College Boulevard would require for noise attenuation a berm that would be 8 to 9 feet high, earth berm. And then for outdoor activity on those two lots, they also suggest to have it on this side of the residence that would be constructed on the lot. So it's similar to those two parcel maps that were down.
So Granite Meadows put in a dirt berm too. I mean, I was wondering is, if we're doing a dirt berm here, is it the same next door, or?
It would be very similar,
Okay,
very similar circumstances with the noise from Sierra College Boulevard.
okay. And then maybe a third question, and these are just to maybe get clarification. It appears that, the middle of the lot is a high point, and the back of the lot is a high point, and then in between there's kind of a little bit lower point, and there's a drainage there that's designed specifically to accommodate the drainage. And I just was wondering, it looks like the flow goes to the north onto an adjacent property. Is that a drain on the adjacent property, or what's it flowing into?
I think I'd defer to engineering surveying on that one as well.
Thanks. Just 1 second.
Thanks.
I do know that this, in general, this is the highest property in the area, and it gently slopes away. So you can think of this as kind of the ridge. The overland release, can I use your pointer?
Should I go to the grading?
This is fine.
Okay.
Thanks. See, the overland release is collected this direction, comes across, and heads out this way. And in general, the ridge is about like this, but it's not a terribly sloped site. If you stood there, it's mostly flat.
So-
And it isn't changing the overall flow of water in the area. Water is going to come into the site and leave the site in about the same manner it does today.
Well, when it's released on the adjoining property to, I guess, the north, right?
Yes.
What does it do there when it goes on the adjoining property?
It probably, I believe,
Accumulates.
there it is. This is the grading plan. There is a rock dissipation that returns it to sheet flow.
So you say there's a rock what?
A rock dissipation where it comes out and spreads it out. Basically, it spreads out the flow back to a sheet flow situation. There's no creek or concentrated ditch right now. If we want to get a little more detail on that, I'm going to ask the question of the project engineer.
Well, I guess kind of what's going through my mind, and maybe engineering has really analyzed this and probably got it figured out, but with the pavement and the roofs and stuff, there'll be an increase in flow, and so I'm wondering, as far as the adjoining property owner,
No, it was analyzed in the negative declaration. If you're talking about peak flows and how much water is entering and leaving the site, that won't change. Is that correct, Ed? Let me defer to the project engineer.
okay.
Well, okay.
Good morning, Ed Giuliani with Giuliani & Co., civil engineers for the project. Yes, Sarah's correct in that the drainage sheet flows to the adjacent property as it did pre-development, and the flows in the study, the pre-development hydrology study that we did, show that the increases are negligible, and that's due to the way the water routes through the site, the development condition. Yes, you're going to have streets, you're going to have buildings, but you're also going to have new landscaping that provides absorption. We're going to have swales on the north, south, and alongside the road that'll route the water down and around and to the pipe system and through the energy dissipator to the north.
Has there been any contact with the adjoining property owner to?
Well, they are aware of the subdivision. They were notified with the process, so yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed. Any other questions? Jeff, you had one?
Couple here, if I could. Roy, the Granite Bay Mac made a request regarding some landscaping on that berm, correct?
Yes, and we added a condition
That's,
that would require that lots 1 and 7 have landscaping that we would review and look at and approve by the Development Review Committee, and also it would have to be maintained.
and I didn't check this, but is there any street lighting proposed down here?
There is one street light that is required per our land development manual out at Sierra College Boulevard by virtue of having a subdivision proposed on a street of this magnitude. It's based purely on the average daily trips of Sierra College Boulevard.
And the type of light that goes in there, does that meet the no light pollution kind of standards that like a commercial building and parking lot lighting would have to meet?
That's a good question. I'd have to defer to planning on that.
Yeah, it would have to meet the standard.
Okay, okay. And then last question, we have a letter here from the school district where they're wanting to have the developer come in and enter into negotiations for payments of developer fees. I don't want to just make the assumption that that's an erroneously written letter, but my understanding is building fees are paid at the time building permits are pulled?
That's correct. School fees are paid at the time of the building permit issuance. However, there is a condition of approval number 34 that addresses notification to certain districts. And in that condition, based upon this letter that was received, we would suggest that we include the Roseville Joint Union High School District, just to note that in the conditioning that they have been notified.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, I guess we could invite the developer spokesperson up for the project representative. Do we have one here? Yeah, why don't you please come forward and identify yourself and make any comments you choose to.
Hi, I'm Jack Rynan with the Developer Artisan California LLC, I mean, we agree with the staff's recommendations and would concur with those and intend to follow the items in the negative declaration.
Okay, any questions of the applicant?
You don't have any problem with any of the conditions?
No, I think we're okay. I think we're okay with all the conditions.
Okay. I see no other questions. Thank you. Anyone in the audience care to address this project? Seeing none, then we'll bring it back to the commission for some sort of action. Is there any other questions of staff or of the project?
Mr. Chairman, if there are no questions, I would make a motion.
Sure.
That we would adopt the mitigative negative declaration. It's Attachment D, and the Mitigative Monitoring Program Attachment E for the Mare subdivision, and that we approve the vesting tentative subdivision map subject to the attached findings and conditions of approval, and that we, in condition number 34, add the Roseville Joint Union High School District under those being notified for the subdivision.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Oh, is that right? Yeah. Okay. Let's have roll call then. Could we, Kathy?
Mr. Gray?
Aye.
Mr. Nader?
Aye.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes?
Mr. Rakucci?
Yes.
Mr. Denayo?
Yes.
Mr. Sevison?
Yes. The motion passed. The project approved. There is appeal rights of $536 that can be filed with the clerk of the board or the planning department if they want to appeal this decision. Other than that, why, I guess it's going to be okay. With that, we'll move on into our next item. Uh, 10:20, they're just okay, time-wise. Draft Environmental Impact Report, State Clearinghouse, North Star Mountain Master Plans. I guess we're going to have an environmental review of the document.
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Happy New Year. So you probably heard a lot of rumblings about this project, but this is the first time you'll get a chance to take a look at it in depth and understand the scope of it. This is the North Star Mountain Master Plan. It's been developed over the past several years, probably going on 10 years now, and it's intended to oversee the continuing development of the mountain resort over the next 2 decades. So it acts like a specific plan, but it's a conditional use permit with a master plan. The proposed development is limited to an expansion of existing ski facilities and terrain and does not include any additional residences or transient lodging. We've just completed the draft EIR, which includes an in-depth analysis of all the environmental resource areas that could be impacted by the project. It's circulating now, and the public comment period for it will close on January 13th at 5 o'clock. So I'd like to point out for the benefit of the public that the purpose of this meeting is to provide a summary of the findings of the document. We're not here to debate the merits of the project, as that opportunity will occur later on the hearing for entitlements. If anyone would like to submit official comments on the draft EIR, he or she may do so at the close of this presentation. Alternatively, I will point out at the end of the hearing, or at the end of my presentation, how written comments may be submitted after this meeting. So this is a list of the entities and individuals that received a public notice of availability for the draft EIR. Hard copies are made available for those who lack access to a computer at the libraries. In all other cases, the notice of availability includes a link to the county website where the document can be reviewed and even downloaded. This is a vicinity map of the project. North Star is accessed off of State Route 267. It's located about midway between Interstate 80 and the north shore of Lake Tahoe. I just noticed that that's kind of mislabeled there as 89, but that's Interstate 80 at Truckee. It ascends from the Martyrs Valley floor to the top of Mount Pluto. Here's an image of the resort boundaries. North Star Vale controls about 8,000 acres within this yellow boundary, or gold boundary. About 5,000 acres of such is developed as ski terrain and supporting services and facilities. So this is the plan. I'm just going to kind of go through the project level improvements listed here on the plan. There's a list to go through. I'll take time if I need to explain any of these in detail. But before I get there, the draft EIR includes a more detailed project analysis for the improvements for which the applicant is currently seeking entitlement. The review contains enough specificity to conduct site-specific review, and it can allow for the consideration of discretionary approvals. The project-level improvements, if approved by the Planning Commission and by the Board of Supervisors, would be allowed to proceed without additional environmental review. A program EIR has also been prepared, which evaluates the requested actions relative to future improvements. As the first step in the CEQA process for these future improvements, this program EIR examines these proposals only at a conceptual level since we don't have specific site plans. The program EIR will also address all the cumulative impacts that could result from the project. So project components approved at the program level would require subsequent environmental review to determine consistency with this EIR and public hearings for following entitlement. I'm going to go through the project level improvements. Number one includes additional ski trails and the modernization of ski trails and snowmaking equipment. These would be adjacent to the 5 primary ski runs on the mountain. So the areas in white that you see here are existing terrain. That's where development has already occurred. The areas in orange are proposed either expansions of existing runs or new runs altogether associated with new ski lifts. So additional, there are 5, at the project level, there are additional 5 ski lifts being proposed. The ski lift would provide access from the lower part of Mount Pluto here to Sawmill Reservoir. This is a whole new area that would be open for ski. And it's what we call a ski pod. It would include all the terrain that's accessed through that new lift as well. The J lift is down here. It would provide access from North Star Village directly up to the top of Lookout Mountain. And the V, W, and Z lifts would all provide access that currently does not exist out there on Sawtooth Ridge. So in these areas you can see this is a whole new ski pod. This is also a whole new ski pod. There are also 5 skier bridges that are being proposed to provide access for skiers over Schaefer Creek and Martyrs Creek. New skiers service site improvements. These are to provide improved food service, restroom facilities, seating areas on the mountain. And at the project level, only 2 are proposed, one at the top of Mount Pluto. It would be an expansion of the existing summit deck, bar and grill. And then also at the bottom of the backside lift down here. Along with these improvements, a couple of other entitlements are necessary. The first is a Martyrs Valley Community Plan amendment. I'm going to put a little diagram up here just to kind of help everyone understand. There is, within these larger land use designations, there is a small commercial, it's a tourist resort commercial land use designation here. It's not going to serve a purpose as far as the plan can foresee, so the applicant would like to relocate that to the other side of the mountain and then slide it upwards. There's another square over here that it can replace, and that would then be adjusted upwards to meet the bottom of the ski lift, or at the program level, a new proposed lodge at the bottom of that ski lift. This would have to be accompanied by a rezone. Large parts of the east and west portions of the resort area are designated TPZ. Within that TPZ, these little squares that exist in the land use designations are also identified as forestry. So they will allow for uses that TPZ won't. And so the rezone is basically just moving those squares or relocating them upwards just a tiny bit within their same sort of geographical area. We've already contacted CAL FIRE about this. This does not result in a loss of TPZ. The land that's being transferred is similar in nature, so they're comfortable with it not being a loss in TPZ. And finally, this was before you, I think early last year, the zoning text amendment. Yes.
We'll go back to that just for a second.
Sure. It's going to probably take a little while to get this one down.
No, that's okay. Just a simple question, I think. Mm-hmm. The parcel over by the sea lift, is that currently TPZ or is it currently zoned?
This little square down here is zoned forestry.
Okay, so that'll move up? That
will move up within this TPZ area, correct.
Okay, and the other one is currently zoned?
Forestry as well.
Okay, so there's no, so they're just moving them is all you're...
They're just moving them, right. They're not creating new TPZ or new forestry zoning within TPZ. There's no loss of TPZ. And in addition, in this area over here where the commercial land use designation is being relocated, that's not creating new commercial land use either. It's just simply being shifted to another part of the mountain.
Okay, you're moving the commercial activity,
Right, because they don't foresee any commercial activity way out here.
and that'll just become a campground or something.
Correct, correct. Very good.
Thank you.
Anything else while we're here?
Yeah, how big are those?
About 1 to 2 acres in size, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So this was before you, again, like I said, last year sometime, 2 years ago. We're in 2014 now. Forgot that. The only difference between the text as you see here and what you previously considered was when this was proposed, it got rolled into this project, a lot of folks that lived in the Tahoe area were concerned that this zoning text amendment would allow construction of ski facilities within the Tahoe Basin on lands that are zoned TPZ. So the applicant has considered the comments and made one little change here. So this language is all basically the same as what you've seen, but it does state lands which are not located within the Lake Tahoe Basin right here. So it excludes Tahoe Basin properties that are zoned TPZ. And I can go into more detail on this one, but I think you've all heard it before, so we can move on if you'd like.
Has that property been determined on the map? Do you have a map that shows what's considered to be in the basin and that which is not?
I do have an exhibit at the end of the presentation that I can pop up and show you what sorts of impacts you might expect on the TPZ land. Are you talking about land that's zoned TPZ throughout the county?
I'm just asking what land is considered to be within the boundaries of the Tahoe Basin.
Okay.
And which land is not shown on the map.
On the big map there. Yep, I've got an exhibit that'll show that.
Can I see it?
Oh, now?
No.
Okay. We'll go through these. We'll get back to all these. So this is the basin boundary here. This is kind of a blow-up of the top of Mount Pluto. But in general, the basin boundary runs along this line here. North Star properties are here. You can see that the resort activity doesn't extend really into the basin at all, except for that very top of the expansion of the Summit Deck Bar and Grill. Is that helpful?
Yes, thanks.
Okay.
Now, there was an area on the left. If that's the top, huh?
That green spot?
Go back there.
Whoop.
Oh. In other words,
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay, if you go from
I think I know what you're getting. This
the
right
top
here?
of Pluto right in there, isn't that the top? That's the top of the Pluto, of the main part of the mountain, right
Correct.
there.
This is Pluto up here.
And you follow it over to the left.
Down here?
Yeah, then you have that. Keep going, right there.
This.
That's that tip of land that's within
Within the
the
Tahoe
Tahoe
Basin.
Basin, supposedly.
Right. That was really the area of concern. This area here and this area here are the only two portions of the site located in the basin that are zoned TPZ. So
Okay.
if there was any expansion proposed in those two green areas, that would conflict with the zoning text amendment that they're requesting.
So they're not going to be used then?
No, those are not. As you can see, all the areas in orange are the proposed expansions and new improvements, and they don't exist in these two areas.
Okay, all right.
Okay?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to make our way back up. It must be like the Jeopardy buzzer. You have to hit it at just the right time. We're getting there. Okay. So, and that's where we were. Guess we've handled all that there. In addition to the project level improvements, these are the program level improvements. I put these up here just to kind of show you general areas where the expansions are going to occur. The new Q lift, again, analyzed only conceptually at a program level, would be down here off of Lookout Mountain, and this would be a new ski terrain. That has yet to be designed, but that's been analyzed at least in terms of its cumulative impacts. The new Castle Peak gondola would provide access for visitors from the Interceptor parking lot, which is down here, up and over to the North Star Village. This would alleviate all the traffic that occurs on North Star Drive as people are showing up there and having to take those shuttles back and forth. And then there'd be additional non-skiing recreational activities that are centered in the mid-mountain area that, again, were not specified at this level, but they would need to be consistent with the habitat management plan, which I'll get into in just a minute. These non-skiing recreational activities have not been specifically proposed by the applicant at this time, but if they are proposed, they could include activities such as zip lines, canopy tours, disc golf, weddings, and special events.
We do have that one lift that we did approve, which was the toboggan thing, or?
The coaster, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's on hold now.
Still
so,
pending, okay.
Yeah, and that project has been analyzed in the EIR at the cumulative level.
Okay.
So the documents are consistent. Okay, these are the impact areas that were analyzed in the EIR. This is a typical list of the usual suspects. I'm not going to go through the whole list. We just don't need to do that. This is a summary of the impacts. The EIR found that of all the resource areas that were analyzed, only 2 would result in a significant and unavoidable impact, even without mitigation being implemented. And those are, this first one is a visual resource impact. This would be related to the programmatic level construction of the Q lift and its associated ski terrain. It would create additional ski trails that currently don't exist, but would be visible when viewed from segments of State Route 89. The other area that would result in significant and unavoidable impacts is a temporary and intermittent increase in nitrogen oxides. This is due to primarily the shortened construction season. A lot of equipment has to get out there in a short period of time, and it results in a short increase, a brief increase in nitrogen oxides. Nonetheless, it's a significant impact because it exceeds APCD thresholds for nitrous oxides. But both of these resource areas would result in impacts that are also considered cumulatively significant. This is the visual resource impact. This is included in the draft EIR, but I kind of throw it up here and everyone can take a look at it. This is the view from southbound State Route 49 or 89, heading toward Tahoe City. So off to the east here, you see the mountain doesn't include any activity currently, and with the future construction of the Q lift or the Q pod, and probably W and V lift, I think they contribute to it a little bit, would be these lift runs that would be visible then.
Could you show us which ones are the Q and the W lift?
Sure. Dun, 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 dun. There we go. The Q lift is this pod down here. So 89, boy, I'm thinking 89 is over here.
To the right.
So you'd be looking up and seeing some of this area opened up. You'd also see some of this area. This is the Z, W, Z, V, and W lifts over here. And so you'd see portions of these and also portions of these from that view. Mm-hmm. All right, moving along there. So that's the visual resource impact.
Pretty minimal.
Okay, so real quick, I'm going to get into a couple of areas that are pretty important, at least to generate a lot of discussion in terms of this project. The first one is biological resources. North Star began preparing a habitat management plan immediately following the adoption of the Martyrs Valley Community Plan update in 2003. It's a 300-page document. It's contained as Appendix 3.3 in the draft EIR, so everyone can read it. Hopefully you've all read it over the holidays. The HMP is intended to maintain and enhance the natural resource values of North Star while allowing the future development of the resort in a manner that is compatible with those values. So the resource management zones are identified alphabetically in ascending order of sensitivity. Zone A is the most heavily developed and impacted areas, and you'll see that it kind of just runs right where you'd expect it to occur. Zone E is the most pristine and valuable in terms of its biological function, and that largely exists over here, but there's also some down in here. So the HMP has guided the development of this master plan and has led to the expansion, an expansion that is sensitive to biological value and minimizes impacts to habitat or to individual plant and animal species. I want to note that the habitat impacts will be less than significant. With this third bullet down here, the habitat impacts will require a minimum of 1-to-1 ratio of habitat loss to enhancement. And furthermore, the mitigation enhancement areas will be permanently protected from development through on-site conservation. So it's kind of like they've got their own banking there on the mountain. Traffic. As stated earlier, the project does not propose new residences or transient lodging. It also does not propose any new parking facilities aside from a 20-space parking lot that would be located at the bottom of that sea lift near Sawmill Reservoir. There's no need for additional day skier parking because the project is intended to accomplish two goals. First, the expansion of the terrain is necessary to address an existing capacity deficiency on the mountain. The mountain, and this is particularly the north face of Mount Pluto, it experiences significant crowding on peak days, even on just busy days. So expanding the resort areas to the east and the west will disperse skiers and snowboarders across the mountain. It will facilitate circulation and reduce congestion on the mountain and crowding in the middle of the mountain as well. There would also be improved trail access to existing residential development at mid-mountain and also at the village. The second reason is that the expansion is necessary to accommodate a growing destination skier base that is emerging from the build-out of previously approved residential development in the vicinity. So whereas day skiers would drive up to the resort and spend the day, then drive back down the hill, and they've historically made up the bulk of the skiers that visit the site, projects like North Star Highlands, North Star Village, the North Side, Martyrs Camp, they have begun and will continue to create a new destination skier base that will visit the mountain, displacing some of the day skier traffic with destination skiers whose length of stay and arrival and departure habits are different from day skiers. So the surrounding bed base and resort attendance will continue to grow, again, with or without this project, through the build-out of these new townhomes, condominiums, hotels, timeshares that have already been approved independent of this project. All traffic studies are built on assumptions, and the assumptions that were relied on for this traffic analysis centered on the fact that the resort expansion is meant to address these two issues, the existing mountain capacity deficiency and the anticipated increase in lift ticket sales from destination skiers. The traffic study found that there will be a small increase in traffic from new employees and from summertime visitors. The analysis concludes, however, that with the payment of traffic impact fees and annual transit fees, the overall new traffic impacts will be reduced to a less than significant level. So hydrology, this is a relatively brief discussion, but before we get into it, I want to clarify the county's processing of this application while ongoing litigation is unresolved. The county has received comments on the NOP and again on the notice of availability from property owners at Aspen Grove. Aspen Grove is a condominium complex that's located below the village parking lot, the lower village parking lot. And these owners have filed suit against Vail that stems from the operation of stormwater runoff treatment facility. They have alleged that the county cannot process an application for entitlement while there's a potential ongoing code violation. The parcel, which may or may not be in violation, is not one of the parcels included in this application. So even if there is a violation, it wouldn't preclude the county from processing applications for development on other parcels in the area. Nonetheless, the draft EIR took this into consideration and analyzed the hydraulic impacts downstream from the project and found that with the implementation of these mitigation measures, the impacts would be considered less than significant. So those four show up in the draft EIR. It's meant specifically with the additional drainage addendum to the EIR, meant to address this concern.
Let me see the, excuse me a minute. Now, I remember at the North Star Village, and the parking lots and stuff, and then they had a kind of a capture basin below that.
Right. It's meant to treat the runoff from the parking lot.
Yeah.
Let the sediments settle before it's released into Martyrs Creek.
And then the issue kind of revolved around the underground flow from that sediment
Correct.
basin.
Mm-hmm.
And so At any rate, as far as the surrounding lands from that particular area, there'll be no additional drainage that goes into that particular.
Not with the incorporation of those mitigation measures. So upstream, extra precautions going to be taken to ensure no increase in flows. So really, we're just ensuring that nothing additional is going to be added to it, exacerbating a potential situation down there.
Part of the allegation, at least, that we were hearing before is there's a kind of underground flow that is contributing to this problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I guess, how is that addressed in this?
That is something I can't answer too well for you. It's addressed in the drainage memo, and I don't know how they look at subsurface flows relative to surface flows. But the draft EIR, the analysis at least concludes that it wouldn't contribute significantly downstream. I assume it includes subsurface flow analysis.
I was under the impression that the county did a hydrologic study of that whole thing before that other project came in and made the determination, and it was not affecting one or the other. Is that
that's pending. The decision has
part of the lawsuit? Probably.
Correct, right.
Just as well left where it is.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So this may be an issue that's kind of hangs out there outstanding?
I guess it could be. I think, when plans come in for this project, for the Mountain Master Plan, each one of them will have to analyze those flows in more detail. So this is one of the conditions that we call for a comprehensive final drainage report. What we have is a preliminary drainage report that indicated that with those mitigation measures, there would be no increase. The comprehensive drainage report would probably address that subsurface flow.
And so at any rate, but this actually gets into the project level for several improvements.
Correct. Right. That's at the improvement plan stage for each phase of development.
So that still may be a loose issue for those project
Well,
decisions?
if it can't be resolved, they won't be improved. That's as simple as that. So the improvement plans wouldn't be approved if they couldn't demonstrate no increase in flows downstream. If you're still Dan Duttai is here. Maybe he could clear some of this up at the end of my presentation. But
okay, well, yeah, we can discuss it, and the public will probably want to discuss it too. But
right.
I'm just trying to put all the pieces together. Who comes first, and if this project goes through the process and the planning commission supervisors approve it. But if you still have that outstanding issue, what have we really done? Is maybe kind of the question.
Yeah. Again, I'm not sure that it's outstanding. We've done, like I said, a preliminary analysis of the drainage. That indicates that downstream flows could be prevented into that basin, into that area. And then with each set of improvement plans, a comprehensive final drainage report would be required. So they don't go any further unless they can demonstrate that.
But that wouldn't be before the final document comes out?
Well, it would have to occur after the final Mountain Master Plan is approved, because improvement plans can't be approved until that occurs.
Let me try and clarify a couple of things here. We've had this discussion also, if you recall, with the Highlands subdivision when it came forward. There are two pieces to this puzzle. The one is the third-party litigation to which the county is not a party. And allegations that have been made by Aspen Grove as to whether there are violations of county code. The county had already looked at this a year ago, I believe, with respect to zoning, and concluded that there were no violations under the zoning code. There is an investigation ongoing, separate from this EIR and project, as to whether there might be potential violations of our grading water quality ordinance. So that's a separate issue. What we're dealing with here today is, to the extent that the facts or evidence of that litigation have presented potential environmental impacts, then this proposed project, and under CEQA, the county has the duty to identify any of those potential impacts, and if they are identified, to identify feasible mitigation measures that would ensure that those impacts are reduced to a less than significant level. That's the aspect that we're speaking about today, is with respect to this proposed project, are there any potential impacts caused by surface downstream impacts by this project that would also or could exacerbate the issues that have been identified through this litigation in this retention basin into Aspen Grove. So that's what Jerry is identifying here. And incidentally, those mitigation measures, if I'm not mistaken, are the same that were used in the Highlands, is one extra level to ensure that the county and the developers, they go through the process, are taking into account those potential impacts that have forgive the pun, surfaced. So I hope that helps clarify which direction we're looking at today. Each project that comes through, as Jerry was saying, would have to prepare the drainage studies, look at these impacts as well.
Okay. Any other questions at this time?
Okay, yeah, I guess it's really not time to resolve this, but when we're requiring a comprehensive that really gets into the groundwater flow versus the surface flow, it seems like there would be a potential impact there that maybe wasn't addressed in this EIS.
If I'm not mistaken, we don't regulate groundwater. What we regulate, and Dan can address this issue, we regulate surface water. Although, from the standpoint of what we're doing here today, we're accepting testimony and evidence and comments on the draft EIR with respect to surface flow impacts of hydrology caused by the proposed project. So to the extent that people have such comments on the EIR's analysis, that's what we'd be accepting today. But I'll turn the mic over to Dan about the groundwater issue.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dan.
It's Dan Dotai, Engineering and Surveying Division. I have the history of the North Star Village Basin, the associated litigation with Aspen Grove. And in answer to your question, Commissioner Johnson, the groundwater of concern is not total groundwater on the mountain, but what can be considered superficial or additional supplemental groundwater being posed, presumably on the Aspen Grove, by the nature of holding water in the basin itself. So it's not a groundwater investigation per se area-wide. The concern is what additional groundwater impact is being imposed by the impoundment of water in the basin. So we're not doing a groundwater study per se. It's the surface water that flows to the basin, and the concern is that that basin introduces a new additional groundwater surcharge that was not there before.
What part of the North Star project list of projects was responsible for the creation of that basin? Is anyone in particular or just in general?
It was the North Star Village which built that basin, and that was a basin constructed for all 4 phases of the village.
Okay, and the object of the basin was to get sediment removal before put it into the stream, huh?
Correct. It's a water quality basin for purposes of treating runoff before it's discharged to the west fork of West Martyrs Creek. Correct.
Any other questions?
Okay, I guess just so I'm understanding, I guess what I'm hearing you say, since the existing North Star Village is not a part of this EIS.
Correct.
And that existing basin is where the issue really lies. So that's the reason that you're not really required in this EIS to address the groundwater flows or this comprehensive flow regime.
Correct. As County Council indicated, we are looking into a possible grading ordinance violation down on the basin itself relative to the Aspen Grove and the impacts that they're presumably receiving. Mother Nature has not been cooperative right now, so it's taking longer because we haven't had much precipitation to do that. Aside from that, this project here and possible CEQA impacts would be, does this project impose any additional surface water downstream that might exacerbate that condition? And by adding the 2 additional conditions that go in depth to mitigate and monitor to assure that there is no additional flows post-project, we can say confidently that this project would not have any additional impact on the basin.
Okay.
Now, the code enforcement issue may go somewhere else. We don't know yet. We haven't resolved that. But we're trying to separate this project from the code enforcement.
Okay. And you're not interjecting any new groundwater to the basin is what you're saying?
That is correct. By mitigating the flows for this project, it would not be increasing any surface water flows down to the village, and by not increasing any surface water flows, it would not be adding any additional flows to the basin that don't already occur right now.
Okay. Thank you. Nick does it for me.
Okay, any other questions? I guess not. Thank you, Dan.
Okay,
Where was I?
we're all back here now. So that's a summary of the findings of the draft EIR. The EIR circulation period, as I mentioned, ends on January 13th at 5 o'clock. Verbal and written comments may be submitted today at this hearing. Other opportunities for public input would include the NITRAC meeting to provide recommendation to your commission on the entitlements, and also during the Planning Commission entitlement hearing itself. Date has yet to be determined. Anybody who wishes can submit comments by January 13th addressed to Environmental Coordination Services, and here's an email link if you want to do it that way. And then down here at the very bottom is the link for the EIR itself, again, which is contained in the Notice of Availability. So that's it, unless any of you have any questions I can answer for clarification.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? I don't think so. Good job.
Thank you.
I guess now we'll turn to the applicant. Is that what's? I've seen this guy before somewhere.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations on taking the chair. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Andrew Strain with North Star. I was going to ask Jerry if he could put the big map back up again. I would probably cause the system to start spinning wildly if I tried it. We're thrilled to be here before you this morning. This is an important step in the process, and thank you for taking time on your agenda to hear us. We're excited about this plan. We're proud of it. We think this is a good plan that balances what we're trying to achieve from a resort experience perspective and what we've built into the plan from environmental protections and conservation. The key objectives of the master plan as a future blueprint for the resort, they're laid out for you in the DEIR, and I won't try and recite them for you. Page 2-2 is where the key objectives are, and then the more specific ones that follow are right beyond that. But in general, as Jerry mentioned, we want to keep the great resort experience that we have. We know that's got to evolve to meet the needs of our customers and to meet the needs of the future customers who are already included in those previous entitlements that you've talked about and have already been approved and are being implemented slowly but surely right now. So we want to respond to that. It is absolutely our intent to do this in a way that works in harmony with the environmental values are there and not against it. That's just not our core values to do it that way. If you notice on the far side of the plan, for example, these are the more sensitive environmental areas that were identified through that habitat management plan. We have very little, if any, development proposed in there over time. The habitat management plan was done in collaboration with Sierra Watch and the Mountain Area Preservation Foundation many years before our company acquired North Star. This plan took a long time to develop. Started long before 2010. It was in development for several years, and an important balance of that for the additional resort capacity is the habitat management plan, and we're frankly proud of it. Our predecessors did a fabulous job in identifying where the important and the unique natural resource values and features were, and designed the plan around that. You'll see most of the developed plan where you see the changes on the map, the run widening, for example, or the lift improvements, they're surrounding the existing developed area. Those are areas that are already committed for ski uses, and they had the least amount of natural resource values or conservation goals. So we actually took what they had done, which is a brilliant piece of work, working with the conservation groups in the Martyrs Valley, and I know Chairman Sevison knows them from his experience there. And we actually asked them to technically analyze our plan against the habitat management plan and produce something called a consistency memo, which they did on their own, and concluded that what we had proposed, in fact, did meet the intent of our original agreement with those groups. And we're proud of that. I think that's a good way to approach things. It's part of the reason it took the number of years that it did. The master plan itself is more of a traditional physical plan for the resort improvement over time. It's things like additional lifts, it's additional trails, it's additional snowmaking, it's widened trails in some places, it's on-mountain facilities, it's relocating some of the existing or the proposed features that you saw in Jerry's map on the rezoning and the master plan amendments. That's traditional ski planning, is what's the physical layout look like. The magic happens in our business when you combine that with customer service, and the operational aspects that you control to make that destination resort experience fantastic. And that's what we're after. And that's not something that necessarily shows up in a written plan document. But we believe we know how to do that. And we believe that the physical changes that we're proposing over time will allow us to do that. The master plan itself really solves some identified problems that Jerry started to talk about. The J-lift that's new coming out of the village is intended to help get people out of the village more efficiently without having everyone crowd through the same exact lift to get up the mountain. And it takes you to a different place on the mountain, where today it takes 2 to 3 lift rides and a couple of ski trails before you ever get to it. That's one thing. Relocating the cross-country center, right now it is in the middle of the downhill skiing area, and there's a conflict between the user groups. Not that they don't like each other or that they aren't the same person over the course of a week's stay, but we think a better experience can be had for the cross-country user by relocating them to a part of the mountain where the trails lead them anyways. The additional ski trails that you see, particularly in the left-hand side of the image up there, many of those are widening existing ski trails. Those ski trails were first built by the original developers in North Star when Larry and I skied on 210-centimeter skis with 0 side cut. The technology in the marketplace has changed so that someone in my capability level, which is diminishing right now, can still get out and enjoy skiing on a shape ski, on a wider ski, on a snowboard. And those old trails simply were too narrow to allow for anything but one person wide to come down that trail. That doesn't help us with our experience level. So we're actually proposing quite a bit of run widening to the existing trail network because it was designed for a different skier. Snowboarding wasn't even in the picture back then. We're also proposing to add additional snowmaking, and you can see what's going on outside right now. This is something that we think over time will help us stay competitive in the marketplace as we attract the destination visitor to stay in those beds that are already approved or already online at North Star. We listened during the outreach process that we did ourselves before we got the document together. Working with Supervisor Montgomery and her staff, we were careful on how we proposed those rezone and plan amendments to the code. We absolutely narrowed the list of activities that we had proposed in the TPZ code amendment that's before you for consideration. And we also, after listening to their concerns and the community's concerns, removed any possibility that those would apply in the Tahoe Basin. Larry and I have worked together for many years on the basin side of the boundary and realized what a sensitive landscape that is that needs to be taken care of. So we've done that. We've removed those. So we believe before you today is a sound plan that is a balanced plan. It's good for our skiers. It's good for our future guests. It solves some identified problems we have. I believe we have a solid track record of environmental performance, and we don't plan to vary from that one bit. That's a core value of our company, and we will live up to our commitments on that. We're looking forward to receiving the comments today from the public, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions? Wayne?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about traffic, if you wouldn't mind, and the potential impacts. How often is your parking lot during seasonal peak times completely full?
It hasn't been as full lately as we'd like it, right. But given the last couple of years of inconsistent snowfall.
In normal operation.
A handful of days a year when we absolutely have, and there's always the opportunity, as you know, from milling around, skiers arrive at different times. There's always the opportunity to find a spot on. So many of the existing land uses that are in the village, in the neighborhoods that are served by our internal transit system, they come with their own parking. Mm-hmm. Those new second homes and condominiums, they're all parked. Right. So it is very unusual that there is absolutely no parking. I haven't seen it in the years that I've been there.
And those times when your lots are full, do you just turn people away?
I've not seen that happen myself. I know that we advise people out on the highway. We actually try and forecast that coming and put extra buses on the line to make sure we can move people in transit. I actually haven't seen that condition myself.
And I'm sorry, I may have missed it when Jerry said it. How many vehicles can you accommodate with your current parking?
The current parking, I want to tell you, is about 4,000. And that doesn't include any of the partners who already have the Ritz-Carlton, the Village. They're their own parking numbers.
I guess in looking at the studies that were done on traffic impacts, not just in the immediate area, but throughout the area as the traffic flows to your facility. I was surprised by how many of them are at D level already, which kind of indicates that there's already some stress in those areas and that it wouldn't take much to kind of push it over into a lesser category. And so that I was just trying to get a sense
Sure.
of, is there, is that going to be enough to be the tipping point for some issues at some of these sensitive areas?
Sure. We don't think it will. I think the traffic analyst concluded that it would not. We've got such capacity on site to keep people there. And that's a real goal of our plan. It's not to enlarge the day skier user. It's not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, do you ever stop selling tickets when the parking is full? Have you done that in the past ever?
Not since I have been involved with it.
Now, how long have you been involved?
Since 2010, since we've acquired it. We have had some pretty inconsistent ski years. I don't know of a time where we've stopped selling tickets.
I might be able to help with that. There was a time before they built the satellite parking lot that they did in the early years have numbers that they had to live with, and they did put up signs to tell people not to come in. But then since they built the satellite parking lot that's out near the entrance, I would agree that I don't think there's anybody getting turned away at this point.
Right, but if the 4,000 people showed up and there were 4,000 parking places, hypothetically, you would normally stop selling tickets when your parking was maxed?
Well, given that we don't control or know who's staying in the beds on site, that's another part of our market that can also access the site. There are a whole lot of pass holders today that there weren't.
Yes,
many
that
years
doesn't
ago.
answer the question. Do you reach a capacity where the parking is full? Do you stop selling tickets?
Not to my experience.
Commissioner Gray, there is North Star does have a parking management plan. It's outlined in the draft DIR, and it does call out for notification on Interstate 80, I think 89, if parking lots are full, just to let vehicle traffic know that the parking lots are full. So that's just included in there for information.
And who does that?
North Star oversees that.
Working with CHP, Caltrans.
If there's no other question, I have a couple little ones. As you go up the left side of that drawing to where the new campground stuff is,
Yes.
around the lake, will those trails, they'll be year-round, there'll be a year-round road going in there now? Is that?
There is in part of an improved road. Today there is a gravel surfaced road.
Yeah.
And it would be improved to county standards to reach the cross-country center. That's correct.
I guess the reason I'm raising this, I know for years we've been talking and planning about a bike trail and a hiking trail that goes from North Star up through that area to Sawmill Flat, and we're coming the other way from Dollar Point and the Basin to join you. And I just wanted to know if that facility will be part of that trail system, perhaps.
You know, it's a good thought. We hadn't thought about that being available in the summer season.
Mm-hmm.
But as a stopping over point or a rest point along the way.
Or using the campground in the summertime as well.
That's great. That's a good suggestion.
I think that could be a fun experience, amenity, I guess. The other thing I would just like to throw on the table, and I hope that at some point, if the costs get to the right direction, that maybe a roundabout at the entrance, if we're going to do major overhaul of that intersection at the entrance to North Star, that a roundabout be considered, because I got to say, I think it's so much more efficient and keeps the traffic moving more conveniently, and probably has lots of pluses in air quality and so forth. So just consider that if you would. If there's no other questions, then we'll go to the public.
It's in lieu of the stoplight that's here now, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it's not so much in the wintertime as it is the rest of the year, when the traffic has to come down that hill, trucks and everybody, and stop at a stoplight, and then get going, either go up the hill or go again. And I think it does produce air quality issues that could be somewhat mitigated with a roundabout. At any rate, I don't want to destroy everything, but I think it's something that the community has talked about at length. If there's no other questions, I'm going to go to the audience, and we'd like to invite you back if we have questions that we couldn't get answered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Andrew. For those of you that don't realize it, Andrew represents North Star and Heavenly Valley as well. So he's pretty into land planning type things for ski areas. All right.
Mr.
I'm
Chairman,
gonna-
real quick, I'd like to point out if anybody from the public is going to get up and speak, we have a sign-up sheet at the back of the room there, and I encourage you to sign up after you've spoken or before. My apologies, it's up at the podium.
As you speak.
Why don't we take like a 2-minute break while a few people sign up and we can do what's necessary up here.
Whatever that is.
Thank you for your patience. What I'd like to do, if all possible, is give each of you 3 minutes. We have a little timing system, and you'll see it'll turn green, white, and red, and so when you get to red, we'll ask you to curtail your discussion if possible. And then we'll give everyone 3 minutes, and we'll go through this list, and then if there's more that sign up, we'll go on to those. The first person on the list is Tom Dwelly, is that right? Dwelly? Dwelly, I'm sorry. I apologize. Tom, go ahead.
Tom Dwelly. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations on your new title and responsibility.
Well, I'll have to confess to you all that I first came on this commission in 1969. So I was there when we first approved North Star back in the very, very beginning. And in fact, I came across a picture of the chairman at that time with some Colfax, Chester Gibbs. He'd been chairman for 25 years. And they took our picture because we were walking around and there wasn't anything there. And at that point, that was the very...
Well, I hope you bought a lot of property.
Unfortunately, I didn't buy any at North Star. I'll make that a public statement, too. I would like to make one other public announcement on my behalf, and that is I did go up and looked at the area that's somewhat been in question as to whether it was in the Tahoe Basin or not and so forth. So I did go, accepted their invitation to go walk that area and get familiar with it. But there was no commitments of any kind. So just to be fair, nowadays you can't have any secrets. Okay, Tom, please go ahead.
Is my 3 minutes up? I'm 1420 Shadow Mountain Court. I live in Auburn. Mr. Chairman, I've been skiing since 1946. I was born and raised amongst the redwoods down in Central California. Skied at Badger Pass initially. I still have my 210-centimeter head giant slalom skis. I'll bring them out sometime this year. I went to college in Denver so I could ski. I'm very familiar with the Denver ski, the Colorado ski areas, although I have to tell you, skiing and mechanical engineering wasn't a great mix. Vail, skied at Vail during the early years, every year virtually, and then to Beaver Creek, which is phenomenal. It's hardly a place better than that. 1982, came out of the Air Force, and I skied virtually every year except a couple of years stationed in countries that didn't have any snow. 1982, retired and came to North Star, and we've skied here ever since. I got into Bighorn. I was the first one into Bighorn. I was the HOA president from the very beginning, and next week I'll go off the board, thank God. There's hardly a better place to ski around here. All things considered, I've got grandkids that ski. There's just no reason to go anywhere else as far as I'm concerned, all things considered. Again, I picked North Star because everybody can make snow. Everybody does that, but nobody has the water that North Star does. So that's a big plus in my world, and thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you, Tom. Next is William Banka.
Since we only have 3 minutes each, Jerry, the TPZ thing that you had up before would be really helpful, I think, to get the thing going. The clock's running already. I worked on some of this land back in the 70s when Hank was around, and I worked for Budfish, mostly in the timber on the outside there. But and I worked, 78 to 84 roughly, and then I worked as a contractor doing contract work for actually North Star until 2011 when I dropped him as a client because of some, just the way I felt about some things that were
Hey, can I just interrupt for just a second?
Yeah.
Could you give us a background of what your profession is?
I'm a California professional forester.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, anyway, I worked on there, but I left in 2011 on my own accord because I disagree with a few things. But anyway, my comments, I have a lot of comments about a lot of things which will be here. But on the TPZ, I have a few questions about that. The DEIR, they propose, they say they're going to develop ski runs in TPZ, and as county, as you guys all know, it's not allowed use in TPZ zoning. So then they go for the text amendment, which will allow it. And then they go on to say, you know, that they don't really give a good reason for it. That's where the DEIR stops as to why they should build ski runs in TPZ. And they don't give any discussion or any reason, but they give one reason. It's not a really good reason, is that the reason they want to build, they need to have the zoning text amendment is to achieve consistency with the designation that proposed the zoning text amendment. So they're kind of trying to, they propose something that's not compliant, consistent, then they have to do the zoning text amendment to fix what's inconsistent because they want to build ski runs out there. So anyway, California yield tax, timber yield tax law has a bunch of language on compatible uses, that you can have compatible uses in TPZ, and in Placer County, ski trails isn't one of them. And 1 minute. The compatible use in TPZ is something that doesn't significantly detract from the property for growing timber. And when the state made those rules, the Placer County Board of Supervisors, all supervisors, had the choice then to have other compatible uses. And at that time, in 1976 and all the way up till now, they didn't have it as a compatible use. And to change that now would just be a reversal of their decision to not include ski runs in TPZ. So there's nothing in the DER that explains that. But I think there's a clue. And for a reason that they didn't include it, TPZ land is assessed property value is $52 an acre in Placer County, eastern Placer County. Forestry, which allows ski runs, which is all the North Star that's developed, is at 1,950 acres assessed value. So it's $52 for TPZ, $1,950 for forestry, where ski trails are not allowed. So I think that kind of gives an idea of what the Board of Supervisors would probably think, and gives a clue as to the uses allowed. $52 is TPZ zoning, says you can use it for growing timber. Forestry zoning, it's not like they didn't have a place to build ski trails, is based on a completely different uses of ski runs, and they assessed it at $1,950 an acre. So I think that the zoning text amendment, just to have things go into TPZ, that's only one alternative of way to build trails in TPZ. So that's another deficiency with the DEIR. So they didn't include other alternatives. You know, why didn't they consider rezoning? You know what that is, 10 years. Have a public hearing, write a letter, 10 years you have to wait. That's maybe not what they're thinking about. Or you can have an immediate rezone, and that would allow ski trails in TPZ. And you'd have to go through public hearing, notify everybody within 1 mile. You'd be assessed up immediately, and you'd have to pay basically 10-year back taxes. But so those two alternatives I think should at least be discussed in the DEIR and are not. So why they didn't consider other alternatives. Just want to get back to compatible uses. Again, compatible use is something that doesn't detract from growing timber. You look at that ski trail in C, Lift C over there, they even described it as a new pod, which is the same language they use for S-pod, which is a big ski zone lookout mountain pod, was used back in '99 when they built that. And that's not TPZ, that's forestry. So they want to build a pod in TPZ. That trail is 300 feet wide and almost 3/4 of a mile long. It's as wide as the Interstate 80 right-of-way, eastbound, westbound. Shoulders, median, everything. That's a wide swath, and that is not compatible, I don't think, with the intent of compatible uses in TPZ. And I don't think that's probably not what the Board of Supervisors had in mind then, because look at the values. $52 for growing timber, $1,950 for building ski runs. So it's not a compatible use. So they have to show some reason why they would like to reverse the board's decision and say it's now a compatible use. So they've got some hoops to jump through there, I think. One more thing, and I'll get out of here. I apologize for taking too long, but I didn't think 3 minutes is enough anyway. But they use an argument here, and they have a map, is that all the other ski areas in Placer County are built on forestry. There's no other TPZ in the other ski areas. So they think, I'm not sure what they're thinking, but when I first read that, it almost seems like, okay, here's justification to say that we want to build ski runs in TPZ, but it's not going to create a precedent. I flipped that over and I said, well, you look at the map, figure 313, and it's kind of like, it's right, there's no TPZ over there. And I would say, well, that's the history of ski development in Placer County. It's like the industry standard is you build it on forestry, which is allowed and which is taxed at a rate that really represents the use that's happening on the ground, not $52 for growing timber. So I think you might be, can the county ignore that kind of revenue difference? I mean, just as you guys are in the business, you get tax revenues for what's the fair use of the land. And then, I don't know if anybody from Squaw or Homewood or Alpine or Sugar Bowl is here, but I don't know what, and I just thought went through my mind, what do they think about if you let all this TPZ suddenly have, you basically say by ski runs are allowed in TPZ, that's like an entitlement. That's 3,500 acres there in that green. And there's nothing in the DEIR or the proposal that says you're not going to eventually, that would prohibit them from proposing something anytime in the future. So that gives them $52 an acre versus 1950s.
William, I think you're going to have to wrap it up.
Yeah, okay, I will. Can't speak for them, but it seems like maybe business-wise it's an unfair advantage to one area when you're not considering what might happen around the others. So,
okay.
Thanks. I apologize for going too long, and I guess I give these to you.
Give it to Kathy. Okay, then.
Larry, let me ask staff a question, just a procedural here. People are making comments, they're verbally, and they're also turning in stuff. Now, you're not going to try and answer them today. This is for input on the EIR, and then you're going to end up answering those questions in a written document.
That is correct. Today, we are accepting comments on the analysis of the EIR.
Just wanted to make sure the public was aware that we're not going to answer that, or at least we might answer a few things here and there, but
that's correct. The other thing I'd like to point out for the record is, although the public testimony is being limited today, every member of the public is encouraged and has the right to submit written comments up through until 5 p.m. on January the 13th. So having limited time for public testimony does not limit the opportunity for written comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, John Black.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning, John.
Still? Yes. I'll be well into 3 minutes. And I'm John Black. I've been a resident and a consultant in the North Tahoe region for over 20 years. As a civil engineer, I've been involved in numerous development projects and their associated environmental documentation. I spent some time reviewing the draft EIR for the North Star Mountain Master Plan and believe the consultants have done a commendably thorough job. In addition, I believe that it is important to recognize that North Star has a long track record of being very conscientious land stewards. When the time comes, I hope that the Planning Commission will appreciate the merits of the master plan as well as the proposed environmental impact mitigations and support its approval. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Is it Jeff Staples? Stephens? Stephens?
Yes.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's an Irish curse.
As long as you got to come up, huh?
Yeah. My name is Jeff Stevens. I'm the general manager of the North Star Property Owners Association, and there are 1,480 properties in our association. We're not part of the new village. We're separate, the original association. We have some areas of support and areas of concern. Areas of support, we strongly support this proposal. We think it's good for the community. We think it's good for the industry. North Star, Vail, Bill and Andrew and the staff, they have been taking us along this journey for a number of years now at our homeowner association meetings, articles to our membership, small meetings. So we have not been left out of the loop at any point in time. That being said, we have a few concerns, and the committee touched on them a little earlier. One of them was the drainage. We think the drainage needs to include all downhill properties, not just the Aspen Grove concern. Now, in a perfect world, would we love that issue corrected, and we think it can be corrected, and we think it should be corrected, and we will leave this into the wiser people of the county to take care of that. But, you know, we wouldn't complain if it was tied into a solution. The other one was some of the lifts, the J lift, and like I say, overall we support the whole package. We're concerned about the alignment. It's very, very close to some of our neighbors' homes, and it hasn't been determined exactly where it is yet. But it is I believe it's a project, not a program, so it doesn't have a standalone review. So we would like to see that thing resolved before they decide to plant where it's going to go. Accompanied with the noise, I don't know if you know that the Highlands Gondola had this air raid scream for years, and Vail has been very proactive in trying to resolve that. Whatever new lift takes place, we want to make sure that we're not dealing with noise, screeching. You know, it's got to be equivalent or better than what is existing on the other lifts. Traffic and circulation, very, very concerned with us. Just to answer your question, 2,400 parking spots, 12 in the parking lot. When they built the village, they lost 1,200, and they had to reassign that Castle Peak parking, and I believe that's 1,200. It could be a few more, but it's certainly not 4,000. So then you accompanied all the other homes that have their own parking. But in the traffic and circulation, we don't believe that the report has identified the impact from Martyrs Camp. And Martyrs Camp has a potential 650 homes that come through the EVA gate that was supposed to be an EVA gate that has not turned out to be an EVA gate. It only works an EVA gate coming our way, but Martyrs Camp residents have free access to use that road nonstop. So we don't think that was addressed in the circulation report, and that's going to be an issue. You know, we believe since the Martyrs Camp or Martyrs Valley plan needs to be reopened, and you're going to deal with the text amendment, you might want to fix the EVA gate, which was the intention of the Planning Commission when the Martyrs Camp was built along with the retreat. So that has fallen through the cracks, and it's not what it is, and we'd love to see that fixed along with the Aspen Grove issue. All those are nexus and asides to the issues, but we are very, very strongly supporting this overall vision, and we think it's a good one. So,
okay. Let's see, question.
Yes.
So you want the EVA gate to be there or not be there?
We want it to be an EVA gate both ways. Right now, Martyrs Camp residents have free access. They actually sell clickers to their residents, and they give them out to their contractors. And they use that gate going up Millsite Road, which was not designed for that amount of traffic. So it's only an EVA gate going our way into Martyrs Camp.
Are those public roads on either side of it?
It's privately funded road. It's a public road, but it's staff would have to get more involved with you. It's kind of complicated. And it's been an issue. It hasn't come before you, but it's certainly been at staff level in discussions.
So Martyrs Camp is a gated community?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Does your association represent Martyrs Camp too?
No, we don't.
Okay. Aspen Grove, is that in yours?
We are the master association.
Huh?
We are the master association. They are a condominium association. They are part of our 1,480.
The Aspen Grove group
Yes,
is?
yes, they are.
So they're part of your association?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and obviously we can't speak totally for everything we're saying, but neither can any homeowner, but the general consensus of our board, which is a 7-person board, and I'm joined by a couple today that have come down and make the trip, we're supportive of the overall vision if some of these things can be mitigated.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to be clear who you represented.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Any other questions? Great, thank you.
Hayes? Passable? Yeah. Hayes?
Morning.
Good morning.
My name is Hayes Parziebach. I'm with East West Partners, and I also represent North Star Mountain Properties. North Star Mountain Properties is a key stakeholder with this project. Portions of the proposed project lie within lands that are owned by North Star Mountain Properties. We've had a lot of coordination with the Vail Group, and they've done a great job to this point. Planning and continuing the efforts that Booth Creek had worked many years on producing. We are going to provide some general comments in writing, but just wanted to let you know that we're very much in support of this project.
Okay, thanks, Hayes. Troy, Hope Day? I guess it's Troy. I don't know. Tom, maybe Tom.
Yeah.
Huh?
I'm Tom Hobday. I'm a resident of Truckee, have been since I retired 12 years ago. I'm close friends of the people who started the development up at for this project, and last year skied 43 days at North Star. So I've got a vested interest in the project. In my prior life, I lived in Granite Bay, and I was the president of SACTO, the Economic Development Corporation that helped recruit a lot of the key corporations that have created primary jobs in Placer County. And actually, I recognize some of the names. I think I've been to Japan with some relatives of yours, and worked a long time on recruiting primary companies into this region. When we started this major outreach project in 1985 for this region, we focused on the 100 best companies to work for in America. And as those companies started to become interested in this region, we noted a common element that all of them were focused on. First thing they wanted to do was meet with the environmental leaders of the areas that they were looking at. They felt that they had to know what their concerns were and meet their concerns. And quite frankly, if there were not environmental leaders in the area, they weren't interested in that territory, because they wanted to make sure that the area where their employees were going to be working would maintain the quality of life that they were going to build their facilities in. First company we recruited was H.B. Fuller. They located out by the rail yards. There was actually a semi-competition between the environmental groups in Sacramento and Placer County to get that company, even though it was a chemical company. One of the things that's happened with this development is the first thing that Booth Creek did was get together with MAP and Sierra Watch, who were the leaders, the responsible leaders of the environmental community, and work with them to develop this plan. That's really a unique concept in environmentally sensitive areas. Normally, as you are aware, developers come in, damn the torpedoes, try to do what they want, and it's up to you to try to control them. In this case, Booth Creek and subsequently Vail have worked with these groups to develop an environmentally sensitive plan. As a resident of the area and as a long-term development kind of guy, I want you to take notice of that. This is a very unique thing and should be used as a model for future development in Placer County and these mountain community areas. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Jim? Redgens? Am I getting close?
Getting close. Good morning. Jim Brigance. I'm a North Star homeowner. I'm also a member of the board for the North Star Property Owners Association. I'll be brief because this topic has already been brought up, but wanted to bring it up for the record and talk about this EVA gate that Mr. Stevens just addressed to you. Our concern is that this access road leading from Martyrs into North Star and then into 267 is a very short, direct pathway for Martyrs home residents to the North Shore. We're already seeing a lot of traffic, as was brought to you when it's all in completion. 650 homes would have access to this, as well as what we're seeing today are with construction going on, large, heavy construction vehicles going in and out of this into this gate into North Star to get access to 267 and to the North Shore. This was a road that was originally set up and designed in the original Martyrs master plan as an EVA road. There was a gate that's been taken down. The gate that's up now, every homeowner in Martyrs has a transponder key to get in and out of this gate. And basically, just to bring for the record the attention that from a safety standpoint, from a congestion standpoint, we want to see this put back to an EVA.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Jim Bridges? That was you. Don Carr. Hello.
My name's Don Carr. I have ownership in 3 properties in North Star. I'm a real estate broker, owner of Carlong Real Estate in the Village at North Star, and I'm a broker for the Ritz-Carlton Residences, Lake Tahoe, and I'm just here to voice my support for the overall plan. I consider myself a stakeholder in North Star's success, and I believe that the contemplated improvements will increase North Star's viability as a world-class destination resort. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Nancy Ives?
Good morning. My name is Nancy Ives, and I'm the president of the North Star Community Services District. And today I'm here representing our board. Mike Staudenmeyer, our general manager, some of you may know him, and Eric Martin, our district engineer, are preoccupied today. So here I am. I've lived at North Star permanently for full-time for over 20 years, and I've been an owner there for 30. So I'm pretty well vested in there. I'd like to represent our board today and tell you that we are in complete support for the project. Conceptually, we're very happy that Vail is involved and to continuing the plan to make North Star a world-class resort. We're happy with what they've been doing. I think all of us, I can say it personally and for our board, are very happy. As for the DEIR, we are keying in on the services that we provide, and that's fire, water service, sewer, road maintenance, and then of course our trails. And one of the things that we are very concerned about, by the way, you'll be getting a letter from us probably by the end of this week. It's already been drafted, and you'll be getting it with all of the comments detailed out. But we are concerned about our trails at North Star. Currently, we have 11.5 miles of trails that we have built and maintain in our district. And if any of you have been up to North Star, I'm sure you know, especially in the summer, how the public loves our trails. They're open to the public, by the way, and people from Truckee, people from Tahoe, people come up to hike. In the winter, you can ski on them if we have snow. Anyway, we want to make sure that during this development that Vail is doing, we want to optimize the connectivity through North Star to keep them open and to make sure that that they're there, will not be harmed in any way. And our engineers are working very closely with Vail, and I'm sure that will be happening. But I just wanted to mention that, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Any questions?
No, but I share your concern for the trail system, because I'm working hard to come from the other direction at the lake to join
Yeah.
us.
That's different, though. That's the trail from Truckee up to Tahoe.
Yeah.
But within our district, we have 11.5 miles that wanders up the hills and around and through Big Springs and all those areas. That's
Right.
That's a lot of improved trails that we have.
It is.
And then that new trail will add several more miles of it. And hopefully, we're going to get the first couple miles of it from the county line, from the Nevada County line up to the Wildlife Center, if you're familiar with that. We hope to have that done this year.
Oh, great.
Paved.
Thank you.
ADA. Thank you.
Okay, that's all I have on my list. Is there any other list, Kathy? No more names? Okay, well, that concludes the people I have on the list. Did I miss anyone, or did anyone not get their name on the list and would like to comment? Seeing none coming, we'll close the public comment period for now and move back to the commission, I guess, and see if they have any questions of staff that need to be resolved as part of this discussion.
Well, yeah, I guess, just thinking through, we did hear about the EVA gate, and, I think that's kind of a difficult problem, that I wouldn't have an answer for now. The people that live in Martyrs Camp, it's a gated subdivision. If there's an emergency, they need to have a way to get out of the subdivision, and it sounds like the EVA gate with the clickers allows people a vehicle to get out. I can understand the issue from the other side where we have increased traffic and concerns over the increased traffic. And I guess maybe a question is the road that goes up to the EVA gate, is that just a narrow road, or is it up to the suitable standard that it can carry more traffic, or, how you actually solve that problem, I don't know. But if it's a county road, it seems like the people from Martyrs Camp have a right to use it. But I don't know. I don't have an answer to that, but it seems like that's something that maybe not fit into this. But
that road and that gate was an emergency vehicle access, so that if, in case there's any kind of a disaster,
people need to get out.
Traffic can flow either direction.
But in absence of an emergency, it should be shut.
Well, there's that issue, and I suspect that maybe staff needs to go back and review the agreement that was struck between Martyrs Camp and North Star at the time it was done, because there was negotiations that took place, and I don't have that information in front of me, and I don't know what it was exactly, but I do know that there was some agreement struck, and if that agreement is not being adhered to, well, maybe that's an issue. I don't know. I don't know that issue necessarily pertains to this plan revision, which is a bit of an issue. I mean, it might give us the opportunity to discuss it, but I do think that's an issue between North Star and the other subdivision, Martyrs Creek, and I suspect maybe it's just being abused. I don't know. I don't know the answer to it, but I know there is an agreement. I'm familiar with the principles that got it done, and in addition to that agreement, I think there was also the right to have access to the ski hill directly into their area, and in a clubhouse that they've constructed and different things. And so I don't know what the status of that agreement is, but I think it's outside of what we're talking about here. But I think it would be good for staff to know, or at least research, if they wouldn't mind, the status of that agreement, and if they're abusing it, well, then we can hopefully help you correct that. I don't know.
I guess the one issue that I see, though, that needs to prevail is the Martyrs Camp people, if they need to have some form of unrestricted exit strategy versus putting a lock on the gate, I think the people have a right to have a way out in the case of emergency, without having to wait for the police or the fire department to come and let them out. I think that's an issue that needs to override. The safety issue needs to override some of the other factors.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the environmental document today? Seeing none, then I guess.
Well,
Richard?
I guess the cross-country ski trails are going to be in the, I don't see the cross-country ski trails on the map. Where are those going to be?
Well, they're already existing.
Are they?
Quite a few of them, yeah.
Okay, so that's an existing use within the TPZ.
Well, I don't know about that, whether it is or isn't. That they're moving the trail headquarters, or where you can go rent skis and go from there to a slightly different location. And I guess we can turn to staff and ask them if they can respond.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not sure that they're adding cross-country skier trails or adding cross-country skier service sites to serve those trails. Am I mistaken about that, Andrew?
Mr. Johnson, I may be able to answer your question by using the map. Today, the cross-country center happens, we relocated it a couple of years ago. The cross-country center sits right here today. It's up on a little ledge, and it's vertically, it's up above where you would get off as a foot passenger, the gondola. So it's not the best access at the moment for people. A lot of ski traffic and snowboard traffic crossing through here. The trail network today winds out through here, the existing trail network, and it's extensive. It's not quite Royal Gorge, but it's pretty good. And lots of our residents and guests love it, the snowshoe and cross-country. What we wanted to do is make them their own home, essentially. Keep the trail network, make sure we can connect to it. Today you can come out into this area too. There's an old railroad caboose that Larry may remember that sits out there that's kind of a landmark. The trail system goes out there today, so we're not proposing to get rid of it at all. We like it. It's a great asset for our mix of opportunities for recreation. We want to move the center out of the way and help clear up some congestion.
Okay. Yeah, that clarifies it. I was just, there's no new cross-country trails. It's all existing is what you're saying.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe just another thought on the TPZ. I know it seemed like the discussion that came up was all around how much tax money is paid. And, you know, I don't know, I guess I have to go back and review the document, but it seems like the document should address the merits of what TPZ is for. And, of course, the economy, you know, to the county, probably that's a separate factor. But if that hasn't really been addressed fully as far as, you know, how, you know, we build the ski trails, wide ski trail, and the new lift, you know, how that impacts the concept of TPZs and what it was set up for.
The Martyrs Valley Community Plan does identify TPZ as, or excuse me, ski facilities and ski activities as potentially compatible within TPZ zoning in particular. The zoning text amendment would just kind of take that a step further. And you're absolutely correct. The discussion about tax benefits, if there are any, that's a discussion about the merits of the project, and it's not appropriate for the EIR discussion.
So you're saying this is addressed in another document?
Well, it'll be addressed in the staff report, I believe, on the entitlement hearing.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
And what you're saying is that the tax consequences is not an environmental issue.
Right. It's not an environmental concern.
Okay. Any other questions of staff before we close? Seeing nothing else, I thank you all for coming, and we'll invite you back at some time when there will be decisions perhaps made and more discussion and more specifics to lend to you. Thank you all for your comments. With that, we'll move on to our next item. Well, William Banca, TPZ. Yeah. He was one of the few that spoke against it, huh? I'll put this right up here so you can look at it if you like.
Hello. Crystal Jacobson with Planning Services Division, and I'm here today to provide a presentation on the next item, which is a zoning text amendment for transitional and supportive housing. You may be familiar with this because this actually was before your commission in 2011. So in 2007, Senate Bill 2 clarified or strengthened housing law related to transitional and supportive housing. Basically stated that these types of housing are only subject to those restrictions that apply to residential uses in the same type in the same zone district. So again, this was actually brought before you in 2011 because those types of housing were not even called out in our ordinance at the time, and so we did bring this before your commission in 2011 to add those definitions, set use permit requirements, and then set a limit on the number of clients. So there were actually some standards related to it. So that was approved by our board after your commission's recommendation for approval on that. However, when updating our county housing element, which was before you just this last fall, and by the way, that was certified by HCD on November 22nd, so it is an approved document. But when we were undertaking that, the update to the housing element, it was brought to our attention by HCD that the zoning text amendment that we had done for transitional and supportive housing it was in conflict with state law, so it actually wasn't consistent with how we were supposed to address those types of housing. And so when we were updating the element, we had to add a program to address their concerns. And so that was program F8, and it states it's a zoning code amendments for transitional and supportive housing. So basically it's a cleanup. We had to clean up our ordinance to bring it into compliance and be consistent with the state law. So that said, the county shall amend our code to bring that into compliance. So that's why we're here today. So real quick, just to talk about what these are. So transitional housing and supportive housing are various types of occupation of housing. So transitional housing, in terms of the length of stay, is limited to 24 months. Services are offered and participation is required. So there's a little bit more specifics in terms of this type of housing. Examples are, local examples are HOPE, help, healing facilities, peace for families. Supportive housing is a little bit different in that there is no limit on that type of housing. It could be a permanent type dwelling. Services can be offered, but participation is not required. And examples of that are the adult system of care here in the county, various facilities for that. So what we're doing here today is changing the definitions to bring them again into compliance with state law. And so what we changed here is that, and what we found from HCD is that they are not to be considered a use. So we pull out the use in the definitions, and then we add here in red that you see supportive housing can take the form of single-family or multifamily dwelling units. It's important to note that single-family or multifamily is considered a use, but that supportive housing and transitional housing is considered an occupancy. So it's just a type of that use. So again, supportive housing shall be considered residential and only subject to the restrictions that apply to the same type in the same zone district. So basically, we added single or multifamily residential use. So it could take the shape of single-family use or a multifamily residential uses. Same thing with transitional housing. Yes.
Go back to that one, just so I'm sure. You've got single multifamily residential use, but you can't use use up on the first sentence.
Right. So single and multifamily is a use. So that's why it's called out. So this is a use, but supportive housing is not a use. It's a occupation of this use. It's a little complex, but basically the use of single family or multifamily, that's the base use, and then there's different occupancies of those types of uses, and supportive and transitional housing can be either one of those. It's an occupancy of single or multifamily use. So you could have supportive housing in a single family residence, or you can have it in a multifamily residential dwelling. A little confusing, I know. It was we had to go over it again and again.
It's a lot confusing.
It's a lot confusing, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was a surprise to us, but we do, this is something that we are required to do by state law. So then again, change the definition for transitional housing. And then what we also had to do was to take it out of the zone district use tables, and that is because it is not considered a use. However, and so we've actually, it's not struck out here, but you can see down here, this is where this is all coming out. This should have a strikeout through here. The next one. Oh, there we go. Chris put together this fancy presentation. So now it's out, and but what you can see here is, and if you may remember this, is that your commission had recommended that when we put this together initially, that we treat it the same as these other uses. And so, I don't know if you remember that, but you wanted them to have the same use permit requirements as, say an apartment building that came in, that type of thing. So basically, if somebody were to come in and they've got a supportive type housing occupancy, but they wanted to take the shape of an apartment building, for example, they're still required to go through the use permit. It can't be listed in our tables, is what we were told by HCD. So essentially, this is a cleanup of our code. So with that, we recommend that you forward a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for adoption of this proposed ETA based upon the findings contained in our staff report. And I'd be happy to answer any more questions if you have any.
Has the state reviewed what you're planning to do and said, that'll work?
Yes, yeah.
So we don't want to do it again.
No, I know. So apparently we weren't the only, just to point out, we weren't the only jurisdiction that handled this wrong. It was something very new, new type of housing that needed to be addressed in housing elements. And so we're not the only one that's going through a cleanup. We had initially, just so you know, when we had put this together and brought this before you in 2007, we had actually looked at other jurisdictions as examples, and how to treat it. But apparently there are other jurisdictions that are having to do the same thing. So people just weren't treating it the way they should have in terms of consistency with the state law.
Okay.
Let me see, just make sure I get all the pegs in the right square.
Mm-hmm.
We did have quite a discussion about certain zone areas that would be available for people that are under certain income levels, I guess I'd say. Like with the highway, what do you call it,
Highway service.
service area, and we identified certain zones, and the state required us to do that. And so this doesn't really have any relationship to that.
No. It just it doesn't change. These types of uses could still go in these districts, but they have to be treated like this. So whatever requirements are here. Now, so for example, for a single-family home, you're only allowed to have a certain number in a single-family home. Otherwise, it becomes a multifamily dwelling. And so it just gets treated exactly how those other uses would be. So in those districts. So you can see in highway service here, if somebody were to come in and it was 20 units or fewer multifamily, and this happens to be a occupancy type, it happens to be a supportive housing type, they would be required to go through a use permit. Same thing with, the commercial districts here and residential multifamily. If it was 20 or less, it would be required or allowed by right, but you can see that was the same thing down here. We were treating it the same, so.
So what distinguishes this if somebody wants to build a facility that accommodates temporary housing for, I guess, lack of a better word, indigent or people that are below a certain income level? How does this differ from that?
Well, that would be affordable housing, which is addressed in our housing element, where we have to show that we have the capacity to provide housing for folks that are within certain income level brackets. And so we do that. So they could take the shape of same sort of thing. Somebody could come in and they could meet that, or they have an affordable housing need, and it could be supportive housing. But this, again, is just an occupancy, so it could be that or not.
Yeah.
But no, that doesn't. It's kind of unrelated.
Okay. I think I see that.
Okay, any other questions of Crystal?
Oops.
Seeing none, I guess. Thank you, Crystal.
Okay.
Is there anyone in the audience that would care to discuss this with the commission? If not, if you do, please step forward. If not, why, we'll move on. Seeing no one coming forward, why then we'll move on. What's the pleasure? Any other questions of staff, or is there someone ready to make a motion? Okay, Wayne.
Previous adopted negative declaration as set forth in Exhibit B to this report, and that the recommendation to the Board of Supervisors adoption of the proposed zoning text amendment set forth in Exhibit A based on the findings, or the following findings in Exhibit A.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Nader?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Ricucci?
Yes.
Mr. Genayo?
Yes.
Mr. Sevison?
Yes. The motion passed and is recommended on to the Board of Supervisors then. I don't believe we need to address the appeal thing because it's going on to the board, so that'll take care of itself. Thank you all. Okay, transitional housing, we can put you away. Sheridan Community Plan. Oh, this is a hot item. I can remember going there 100 years ago and getting tar and feathered. Okay.
Good afternoon, Commission.
Good afternoon.
Christopher Schmidt with the Planning Services Division. Just to give you an update on our process to date of updating the Sheridan General Plan, where we've been, and as we're wrapping up, basically a summary of where we're going. But we want to go through the changes that we're proposing in the draft plan, kind of the hows, wheres, and whys, how we got to that draft plan that you received about a week ago. So The board gave us direction back in late 2012 to update the 1976 Sheridan General Plan. It's our second oldest community plan. So you've been, I think the oldest is Alpine Meadows of 69. So you may have been here for every community plan. All of them, right? Yeah. So Sheridan is a rural community north of Lincoln, just pretty much on the county border. Like many small communities, its existence is due to the agricultural economy of the area, but also its transportation network. It started off as kind of a crossroads of 5 different roads in rural Placer County. Sacramento, Nevada Road was the main one. So it's established by the transportation network, and it was formed to basically serve the wagon trains coming through that area. And later, the train that connected through Lincoln and Roseville up into Marysville and further north. So it was established in 1855, and it was mixed use, compact, and basically served the local economy plus the travelers along that way. So there's a few historical resources remaining in town. It's very unique. The town site has a grid pattern. It was laid out in the early 1900s. It's got alleyways, which aren't very common in the older communities in Placer County. And there's some historic resources. And one of the most important is the Sheridan Cash Store, which was built in 1879. It's vacant today, but it's treasured. Actually, there was a proposal a decade or so ago to demolish that structure, and the board actually said no, it has to be saved. So it is vacant, and the property owners are trying to sell it and looking for a new use, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So there's been a lot of change out in Sheridan. The economy has changed, obviously. The proximity to metro areas is pretty much what's driving our rural communities in Placer County today. A lot of commuters heading to Sacramento. But there is a lot of farm use in the rural areas, so that's still active. And infrastructure constraints in the town site, there was a moratorium on sewer and water connections. So there hasn't been a lot of growth in Sheridan over the years, but that is now changed. So why are we doing the plan update? To keep the plan to date. Like I said, it's pretty thin, 1976 plan. Changing community priorities, new laws and regulations at the state and federal level that we should be addressing. We want to prioritize areas for change, including growth, revitalization, and preservation. Reassess the land use plan, which hasn't changed in decades. And then infrastructure improvements. There's been water and sewer improvements undertaken by the Facility Services District, basically the county, that now allow 82 new connections in the town site. Not listed up here is also a community desire to keep the Sheridan School open. They're at capacity today, but there's always been the threat of closing due to lack of students. So a lot of people in the community think that if a few more residences out there will help keep the Sheridan Elementary School viable. We started off this process in late November of 2012. We sent a survey to property owners in the Sheridan Mac area, which is much larger than the general plan boundaries. We'll talk about how that's changed. 436 surveys mailed. We received 97, which is 22.2%, which anything above 15% is considered good. Actually, we got a survey back yesterday, so about a year late, but we're glad it got in. So we have 98 completed in return, so probably a little bit under 23% now. And one of the key questions in that survey was we asked the residents to identify the type of development they'd like to encourage in Sheridan. And on the bottom you can see develop existing town site, highway services along 65. The new bypass kind of skips to the west of the town site now. So that's an opportunity and a challenge because a lot of those travelers aren't passing the town site itself. Redevelopment of 13th Street, new housing, and day-to-day shopping. So if you're familiar with Sheridan, there's not shopping. There's a grocery store. There's not a gas station. Residents said we'd really like to be able to shop and not have to drive to Lincoln or to Wheatland or Marysville or shopping. So something that was in town was their desire. But the challenge is the population. There's a balancing act. Not enough population to support that. Do we want enough growth to allow that? So it's a constraint. In late November of 2012, we had a public workshop kind of to kick off this effort with over 100 people in attendance. The locals say it was probably the largest public meeting Sheridan's ever had, so we're very proud of the residents of Sheridan. What we did was provide an overview of the upcoming plan update. We examined opportunities and constraints found in Sheridan, and then we had breakout sessions. We had 4 tables set up with groups of about 20 to 25 at each table and asked them, what does Sheridan look like in the future? Should the plan area boundary change? Where should land use change occur? And was there any interest in having Sheridan considered as a relocation site for the fairgrounds, which is now in Roseville? And this is what we heard from the community. Keep it rural. Retain small-town community feel. Preserve open space. No land use changes outside of the town site. And no to the fairgrounds relocation. So not a lot of desire for change, really. The Sheridan MAC appointed 2 of their members to lead a subcommittee to work with county staff on the update, and then it was open to any member of the public that wanted to attend our meetings. We had a total of 9 meetings. Their key role was to give us feedback on ideas and offer suggestions, and also develop a vision for the future of Sheridan. And here's the Sheridan MAC subcommittee participants. So these people put the community in a community plan. 59 of them either attended one, several, or all the meetings, helping us create the document you have today. So we're very proud of them. One of the first areas we had them look at was expansion of the plan area boundaries. So the existing plan is basically 2 square miles and it surrounds the town site. So here's the town site. Here's old Highway 65. Here's new Highway 65. The railroad tracks parallel. Here's Riosa Road, cuts through town. We weighed the pros and the cons. We keep it the existing size, expand it slightly, or grow larger to include the whole MAC area. And we basically decided on expansion to include the MAC area boundary, but also the United Auburn Indian Community, 1,200 acres north of Karchner Road. So we've got this new plan area boundary. Here's the Sheridan general plan boundary. So we're up to nearly 15,000 acres from about 2,000 acres. So quite a big expansion. And the benefit to them is having local policies and programs in a community plan rather than relying on the general plan. So all these people, property owners out here, are now under the county general plan. We'll include them in the blue area in the community plan.
So Chris, I guess I'm assuming that the Auburn Rancheria lands are not held in trust yet?
I think they're owned by the tribe itself.
Owned by the tribe, but if they were in trust, they'd be included in as federal trust lands?
Yeah, they would be. Is there a process they still have to take? I'm not sure of the status of their property.
Huh?
I'm not sure of the status of the property holdings that they have. I know when we looked up ownership, it's listed as the Auburn Indian Community property. So it's not federal government.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking, I'm just kind of questioning why they wanted to include, other than I guess they surround it, but if it's trust land, then the county wouldn't be involved in what happens on it. But if it's not held in trust yet, or if the federal government hasn't recognized it as in trust, then I guess it would be under county jurisdiction.
It would be sovereign land. There's and I'm not sure if there's an MOU between the tribe and the county that any of their projects would go through our process, but the county doesn't have a lot of say in what happens on that property. So a lot of the policies really wouldn't apply.
Well, that would be the difference between held in trust versus just owned by the tribe.
Right. So I think today it's owned by the tribe and not in trust.
Okay.
So they do have.
Maybe something to verify, just so you.
We've been phone tagging a lot and emailing back and forth. We're actually going to be meeting with them at the end of the month to sit down.
Is it something that you or the groups just came up and to carve into the plan? Or
Yeah.
did they come voluntarily and say, hey, we want to be part of the plan?
It was an internal discussion that said that it'd be a good idea to have their property in a plan area rather than the general plan area. So it solidifies the relationship to the town site, to Sheridan.
Were the people that reside in the additional plan area, were they part of the process for all the hearings and that, or?
We did not formally notify them that they're going to be part of the new plan area, per se. We have sent a mailing out about a week ago with this map saying the proposal is to include these areas in the plan area, and there's a public meeting next week. But these, all these in this orangish color, everyone in here was invited to the kickoff meeting. They all received the survey. So we had an email distribution list of people that attended that first kickoff meeting. So 100 of them have been getting all our notices every month, our subcommittee minutes, notice of upcoming meetings, and all the documents. So if people wanted to pay attention, they could pay attention, but we haven't been doing continuous mailings and outreach to say, oh, we made this decision, we made that decision. Next week will be the test. Do you agree to be in the plan area? And just to backtrack, and I don't have a slide on this, the original county staff proposal was also to include this joint MAC area. So the plan area boundary would have grown this large. And we mailed all these property owners notices and got quite a backlash that did not want to be in the Sheridan plan. They wanted to stay in the general plan. So we held off and only kept the tribal land. So that's the revised proposal.
So the blue line is a current proposal?
The blue line is the current proposal.
Oh, okay.
It's important to note also that when this comes back for its formal hearings before both the Planning Commission and the board, there'll be a full legal published notice to all residents involved. So that would include the residents within the proposed expanded area.
Within the red area? Within the red line area?
No,
just in the blue
line.
Blue line.
Blue line.
It's just separates.
So the new plan area, or the proposed plan area, is 662 properties, nearly 15,000 acres, and a whopping population of 1,172. So one of our larger community plan areas, but one probably the smallest as far as population goes.
Is the board made any comment on the boundaries at this point? Is that what they wanted the staff to do, or is it you just did what you thought was reasonable?
We've had briefings with Supervisor Widening,
Okay.
Supervisor for District 2, but not a formal, they haven't voted to accept that change. So it would be a general plan amendment when we adopt this, because we're also moving property from general plan to a community plan, plus some rezonings, and we'll walk through that too.
Thank you.
So what we did with the back subcommittee was kind of encapsulate everything we heard from the workshop, what we heard from the survey, and then also subcommittee discussions, and came out with some community direction. So what we heard from all three of those efforts was maintain existing community character, encourage infill development and revitalize the town site, protect agricultural uses and open space, attract additional services, and diversify and expand the economic base. So those 5 items are pretty much what this plan tries to do. And then we worked, taking those 5 items to create a Sheridan vision. And that vision is to maintain the rural small town character of Sheridan by managing growth, revitalizing the existing town site, striving for high quality aesthetics, and providing for community development needs to enhance the quality of life for current and future residents. It's quite a mouthful, but a lot of it deals with land use and community design, so that's what we'll focus on. And a lot of the plan is chapter 2 and 3, so it's land use and actually it's chapters 3 and 4, land use and community design efforts. So the priorities are here, focus on town site, and we'll walk through these of the changes in the recommended changes found in the plan that implement these 5 items. So here's the proposed land use. There's 8 changes. We'll talk about those. Here's your town site. All this area over here is 80-acre minimum. It's key to note that everything west, which is now called Sheridan Lincoln Boulevard, Old Highway 65, this is all on septic, no sewer over here. The only sewer and water system is found in the town site. So we're kind of limited what we can do over here, but we're planning for, this is a 25-year plan, not to say that water and sewer can't be brought over here. All this is also on septic and well. These are your 10-acre parcels, 20-acre, and then a little higher density in the town site, and commercial along 13th Street. Industrial is purple. This is a farm, and then these numbered are our proposed changes. The tribe property has a PD designation. It's unique to the plan area.
Say, Chris, on the, well, maybe you're going to cover it on the, I thought I read where under the industrial, it's outside of the sewer and water zone?
Yeah, it is. So it also, all that area that's zoned industrial has a PD, use permit designation. So to recognize that it's zoned industrial, but if you really want to do industrial, it's going to be a process. So the county wants to really look at what you're proposing, because a lot of things may not be suitable for septic. And if you're trying to do an intense use, you're going to have to bring water and sewer over from the town site.
Okay, so that would be.
So there is
any
industrial
proposal would
use.
have to address that.
The use it doesn't need anything.
There are some developments on the industrial land, but they're really low intensity, like storage yards, a landscape, that type of facility. Not a lot of employees, no public bathrooms, that type of thing.
Chris, the conservation agreement that's kind of working its way through the process, doesn't it take in a lot of this area and kind of designate it more as kind of an open space area and very much limiting development?
Yeah, there's no plans for thousands of units out here. All this stuff will maintain their existing zoning and able to split based on what that zoning is today.
So the agricultural areas out there are pretty much going to stay agricultural?
Yeah, and it's pretty much what we heard from our subcommittee, no desire to change that. One of those key priorities was reinforce the town site. Like I said, they're allowed to have 82 new connections to water and sewer. So there are quite a few vacant properties in the town site and available for new home construction. If anyone wanted to put in a new subdivision adjacent to the town site, the policies in here say you really should respect that existing grid pattern and extend that, keep that going if you're building adjacent to the town site, because the folks in Sheridan thought that was important to maintain the character of the community. The other area we focused on was 13th Street. It's this basically here. All this is industrial. All this is general commercial. This block here, this block here, this block here. This is auto service. So we really focused on this area here. And here's the existing corner store, the fire station. This is vacant. Here's the historic building. This is a tavern, and this is the post office. So quite a bit of vacant land, and I think that's testimony that we had this general commercial zoning, no demand for stores there. So the residents want stores. We've got the zoning. It's been vacant for probably decades, since probably late 1800s when the town site burnt down. So one of the things we talked about a lot was, how do we redevelop 13th Street? And can we wait for 30 years for the population and surrounding communities to grow, that there's demand for a coffee shop or something else? So it's really an opportunity. In this, you can see there's a lot of vacant land. So all this red is existing commercial. This is neighborhood commercial, general commercial.
Chris?
Vacant.
How big of an area,
This is-
acres-wise, or what are we talking
This
about
is a
there?
grand total of 5 acres, these 2 blocks. So not very big.
And Chris, could you show where the new 65 runs in relationship to this? Is it
This map is tilted, so north is actually this way. In the new there's the old 65. The new 65 would be over here.
And is there an intersecting road between that and this area?
Yeah, Riosa Road comes down
It's farther up.
about here. So it's a new Riosa Road. So you actually, to go to this Riosa Road, you have to go down Sheridan Lincoln Boulevard, make a left, and then you're on the bypass. So you're a little bit away. So that's one of the challenges. Half the traffic that was here is now up here. So if you want to attract a gas station here,
You'd have to turn.
Is north pointing up on that map?
north is this way.
Upper corner.
Yeah.
Going that way. I just skewered it so you could
Okay.
zoom in and get closer to 13th Street. So 13th Street, here's a historical image of 13th Street. So back in 1881, Sheridan, in a population of 125, had stores, a drugstore, blacksmith shop, a flour mill, a shoe shop, 2 hotels, and 3 saloons. So it's really a historic town, unfortunately.
Backwards.
It all burnt down in the late 1800s in a fire. That brick commercial structure, the Sheridan Cash Store, was one of the few remaining structures left in Sheridan after that fire. So we talked about what can we do with 13th Street. So not a lot of demand today for general commercial or stores. Potentially opening it up for residences, attractively designed. And today, under general commercial, you can't do single-family residences. The owner of the cash store has had some inquiries from people saying they've been through there, say, make a great home. Can't do it under existing zoning. So what we're doing is proposing a town center commercial combining district. So there's some uses in general commercial that the subcommittee didn't want to see, and we'll go over these when we go through it'll be a zoning text amendment through adoption, but just briefly, recycling collection, golf driving ranges, mobile home parks, contractor yards, mini storage facilities, RV parks. Just didn't think those were appropriate under general commercial. So what we can do is create a new combining district, so it'll be a zoning text amendment to do a combining district. It'll refer to those uses and standards in an adopting ordinance or in a community plan. So what you'll see in this document, in the land use chapter and the design chapter, are the standards for 13th Street that deal with this town center commercial combining district. And another thing we're looking to do is allow live-work units. Today you can kind of get there in our zoning ordinance, but we really don't even define live-work. Basically is what you see here, a store with a residence up top, or even here, some kind of office, like maybe an accountant's office with their home next to it. So we would make that easier, and it would really be the only area in Placer County with that allowing live-work units. And it may be a use that someone may find attractive, or it's another use for that old cash store on 13th Street. So this town center commercial combining district allows us to get beyond just stores and offices, but can create this mix of uses that can
Chris,
the 5 acres.
generally on that allowed, the living part has to be the person who has the office as well. It can't be an outside residence, right?
It would have to be the owner of the business would have to live there. So, like I said, we would need a zoning text amendment. We asked the subcommittee, do you want drive-throughs or gas stations? And they didn't think it was appropriate for all of the area on 13th Street, but we would allow it on these two corners at Rioso and 13th Street, so these two parcels. So gas station drive-throughs allowed. We would allow on-street diagonal parking, and also wanted enhanced streetscape when any of these parcels get developed with sidewalk, maybe some decorative pavers, decorative lighting, kind of that old town look. So the document itself has design standards for parking. The parking would have to be on the side or behind a building. They didn't want the old parking out front, typical suburban development. They wanted historical. So the architecture required would be historic, have a historic theme, kind of keeping what the cash store looks like. Brick, old-timey, maybe front porch. Some lighting standards, signage, didn't want pole signs, and also some restrictions on usage. So we'll see that in the document. Attracting a gas station to the area would, the residents thought that would be a good idea. Highway service zoning, there's no highway service zoning in place today. So we talked about doing two parcels. It would actually be here. All this land is vacant. This is zoned industrial. This is farm, this is farm, this is farm. Unfortunately, all this land is owned by Caltrans. So no, we don't anticipate Caltrans giving this up anytime soon. We've asked them, they don't have plans for like a flyover intersection here. It's kind of just in their land bank for who knows what's going to happen in the future. So the only private property were two parcels over here. We were going to do both. We heard from the second property owner that didn't want to change. So this vacant parcel here, 6.2 acres, is proposed for highway service. And that's that number 1 there, you see. Design standards, they didn't want your suburban typical stucco or cinder block gas station. Wanted to have a farmhouse or a country theme that you see here. which staff believe is appropriate for that rural historic community of Sheridan. Other priority was new jobs and investment. Like I said, a lot of the land that is zoned industrial and vacant is owned by Caltrans. So we talked about rezoning, getting more industrial land out there. And we're proposing 25 acres to business park and 33.6 acres to industrial park. So in number 2 would be your business park. Here's the bypass. Business park has got a little higher standards than your basic industrial zoning, no outdoor storage, for example. So we thought that was appropriate for a scenic area along the bypass. So it's heavily traveled. And then number 3 would be your industrial park zoning, kind of set back from the bypass, kind of screened by the business park. And so this 50 acres is, we think for the next 20 years, is probably enough to attract some low-intensity development out there. No water or sewer over here, like I said. So anything out here would be low intensity. But we talked to economic development, and they thought that 50 acres would be enough that if a large developer wanted to come out here, 50 acres would be enough of a big project that they could pay to bring water and sewer over here. So we're pretty happy with that. So long-term plan, we're not expecting any of this to attract development by the end of this year. Could be next year, could be 10 years, could be 25 years from now. But we're at least laying the doormat that we're open for business. However, with the use permit, we're saying we're open, but there's some problems over here that you have to solve before you can do your project. So the use permit combining district, which all this right now is in use permit, would extend to these: highway service, business park, industrial park.
Say, Chris, back to number 1. What did you say that is?
That's the highway service. So it's this corner piece. Riosa Road comes like this, connect to the bypass.
So there's not a road. Is there a road that, how do they get to that? How does people get to that?
There is a road through here. It's just not shown up on the GIS map. So this road, there's a light here on the bypass.
And that has access to the Highway 65, that road?
Yeah. It's the bypass access road. It was a new road that Caltrans constructed as part of the bypass project.
Okay.
So protect rural areas. We're not proposing any increased density in the rural areas outside the town site. All that zoning stays the same, except there are a few changes, and I'll walk you through those. There's a parcel on Old Highway 65 here at, I call North Nader Road. Nader Road kind of loops around. I don't know if it's named. There's a Nader on the commission. It's got an industrial park zoning. We're not sure how and when this would change, but it's surrounded by all farm zoning. So it's kind of this oddball industrial park zoning. So what we're proposing is to downzone that 33 acres to farm zoning to match what's neighboring. So it pretty much compensates. We're losing industrial here, but we're putting it closer to the town site where it makes more sense.
Chris, were you able to get hold of the landowner and if there's...
We haven't heard from it. It's owned by a trustee. We sent them letters. We sent all the property owners where we proposed a rezone. We sent them a packet saying, here's what we're doing, here's what we're proposing, here's the reasoning. Please contact us if you object or you want more information. And we heard from, I think it's 13 property owners. I think we've heard from 6 of them.
Yeah, that was originally going to be a manufacturing plant back in the 70s. Jim Kellison, who was a business owner in Lincoln, was going to relocate his business or his manufacturing out there.
So 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a search trying to find when it was rezoned, and we couldn't find anything in our records. So it's kind of just this oddball hanging down there, and this is a way to clean it up. Unless they come forward and object, then we'd reconsider it. But right now, the proposal is putting it into farm. And then there's 2 existing mitigation banks in the plan area. Silvergate Mitigation Bank, which is west of the town site, north of Riosa Road. And then the Yankee Slough Mitigation Bank, which is along Highway 65, Old Highway 65, very scenic grassland area. This is a lot of wetlands. We're proposing to change those to open space. So there's existing easements on there. They'll never be developed for homes, per se, and we'll asterisk on that one. Can't be subdivided. They're just permanently protected as open space. So it's just recognizing that this is open space land. Now the Silvergate Mitigation Bank the seller retained rights to construct 3 residences out there. So if it was open space, you couldn't build a house. So we have this rural ag zoning proposed. 3 2-acre pieces. It's spot zoning, but it's just recognizing that he can still build out there, because we heard from him saying, well, what are you doing to me? And they're perfectly happy with our solution.
Is the ownership still in the name of the people that created the bank? Or is
It's Wildlands. Riley Swift is still the owner out there.
And so they pay taxes and maintain it and.
Yeah, it's permanent conservation, perpetuity.
The smaller parcels in town there, those are 10-acre parcels?
In the town site, most of them are like 60 by 120. This is 20, 20s, 10s, 5s, and then higher density in here. There is even a multifamily site, the mobile home park here.
And it's not, you don't think it's inconsistent to create a few 2-acre parcels over there out in the middle of nowhere kind of thing? That
It is, but right now it's 80-acre minimum. But all this area can't be developed, all this dark green. So it is inconsistent, but it's just recognizing that he can build 3 residences on there. And it'll be 1 residence on 3 80-acre pieces. So he has to do lot line adjustments to create that. But the homes themselves would be in this 2-acre envelope, and that's written into his easement, where he actually designated future home site, future home site, future home site.
Seems like there's probably some kind of a deed restriction from the original owners, maybe.
Yeah, this is all permanently restricted.
It seems like there would be a temptation by the owners to eventually just walk away from it and not pay the taxes or anything if they could, because they can't use it for anything. Is that
They're monitored by the state. I think they have to set up kind of
perpetually?
Yeah, like a fund to maintain it.
It just.
I think the state holds the easement itself.
They sold off all the rights or the whatever. Okay.
Yeah. And then the other thing we talked about in the suburb or the rural areas, they didn't want to see flag lots. They thought that it wasn't in keeping in the rural area, the rural character of the area. And we also talked about gated subdivisions, and they decided they did not want gated subdivisions. So if anyone wanted to put a private road subdivision out there, no gates. I know gates is always a conflict here at the commission, so we got clear language out there. You can gate your private property, but if you do a subdivision, no gates. So total rezoning, the plan area is 15,000 acres. Rezoning 1,453 acres, so almost 10% is proposed for rezoning. However, 92.7% of that is those mitigation banks going to open space. So overall, it's not a significant amount of rezoning in the plan area. So the plan itself, you've got a copy of it, 10 different chapters. The first one is introduction, chapter 1, summary of our outreach to date, the overall plan assumptions, goals, and policies. Chapter 2 was population and housing based on 2010 census. Chapter 3 is our land use and has those development standards and guidelines for the town center combining district. Chapter 4 deals with community design, once again 13th Street, and then standards for parking, signage, landscaping, and subdivisions. A lot of the design issues are non-residential. The subcommittee didn't want to dictate design of individual homes with good reason. Chapter 5, a lot of these are all new chapters to the plan since the old one is very slim. Natural resource section, Chapter 6, cultural resources and really interesting history of the town site. A list of sites in the town that are potentially could be on the state or national historic register. Chapter 7, health and safety, new noise section, flood hazard discussion. Chapter 8, overview of roadway conditions and a complete streets section. No plans for new roadways, although we do put on a map. Wheatland has been planning their own bypass project, which would deviate through the plan areas. So we kind of show what that proposal is. That would be a Caltrans funded project and not a county road. Chapter 9 discusses the existing park facilities out there. Also a new bikeway and pathway maps for the plan area. Pathways throughout the town site. A lot of the area doesn't have sidewalks. There was a Complete Streets project completed a couple of years ago to kind of show where that should be extended to provide a safe passage for pedestrians and others. And then Chapter 10 looks at public services, the water and sewer service upgrades. And then we added new maps to the document. So, like I said, next week we'll have our community meeting. When we do come back to you, it'll be a series of items. Of course, adopting the new plan, and then it'll be a recommendation to the board. Adopting the plan, it'll be a general plan amendment, doing the zoning consistency ordinance to align those properties to the plan. So we'll be doing some rezonings, and then the zoning text amendments to define live work, and then create that new commercial combining district. And we're also circulating right now a negative declaration for comment. So it's coming to an end, workshop next week. Thinking a final draft will be out in February of the plan, and then back to the MAC for a couple meetings. We'll talk to them in February again, and maybe get a recommendation from the MAC in March, and then come back to you for adoption, or a recommendation for adoption, and then on to the board.
The January 15th meeting, what time is that?
It's at 7 o'clock at Stewart Hall. It's on Campfire West Road.
7 o'clock at Stewart Hall?
Stewart Hall. It's when you're heading out of the town, it's on the left-hand side. It's right outside the town site. There's a park area, and then it's a community building in the back.
Does county CSA still provide the sewer and water service there?
Yep.
And they've determined there are hookups available now. Are they planning further expansions, or is just depending upon need, I guess?
It'd be based on need.
But they have the ability to expand.
Mm-hmm. They put an additional pond out there, and then spray fields they use. So they have capacity now. And there was I don't want to get into legal terms, but I think it was like pretty much a consent agreement with the state that they couldn't provide any more connections until they upgraded the existing wastewater treatment plant. And then they did some upgrades to the water plant because there were some pressure issues. So they just added a new well and some new piping and a new storage facility. So now we're in pretty good shape and that was pretty much the impetus of the plan update is now growth can happen. Let's update the plan.
Did the county move, or didn't they move the county boundary on the river and give it to Yuba County or something years ago?
Yeah, I think it was just a couple of years ago. They did basically, like you said, we sent them a chunk of property. And in one of these maps, you can actually see it.
It didn't really make sense. I don't know why.
I think that was about 4 years ago, and I think it had to do with the river, if I'm not right, realigning with the riverbed.
Yeah. And I'm not even sure how big it was. It's maybe 50 acres or so.
Yeah, it was minimal.
It was good farmland.
Yeah, it was north of the Bear River.
Yeah.
No homes there. It was just an agreement that we would give it to Yuba.
Huh.
Our clicker's very slow.
I didn't want to drag it out. Any other questions? Yeah. Looks like you've done a pretty thorough job for a community that's pretty stagnant, actually.
It has been. We're ready for growth.
You're ready now, huh? I can remember the hearing we had there must have been in the 70s, and one after another, these guys in their bib overalls would get up to the microphone and start shaking their fist at us and said, I fought in World War WW2, and you're not going to tell me what to do with my land. There was one after another.
I think that mentality still exists in the county.
And you could smell the tar pot and the feathers out in the back, yeah.
This is that piece here, I believe, that was given.
Oh, I see, okay.
Oh, I was wondering why.
Sent over to Yuba County.
Okay.
The river moves away.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for a good presentation.
It looks like this one will be done in less than 11 years.
Yeah. Would anyone in the audience care to comment on this presentation? Give us your name, if you would.
I'm Lyndall Gray, and I work as an assistant to Supervisor Wygant. So I work on the MACs for Sheridan, so I've been pretty involved in all of this. And the comment I'd like to make goes back to the bib overalls. As Chris mentioned the initial meeting, we had this huge crowd of people, over 100. And I think we were all shocked and delighted. But I will say part of the group came because they were afraid the county was going to pull some sneak trick on them. And I just really want to credit Chris and Jennifer Bias, who worked at that time, because they were able to win over the public that this was really a good thing. And it was going to work for the people of Sheridan. It wasn't that the county was superimposing something on them. And I was very interested to watch kind of that transformation. And I have to admit, a little surprised. So the planning department gets big credit for being so genuine and responsive to the opinions of the public.
Thank you. Say hello to Robert.
Wygan. I work with Robert Wygan.
Yeah, say hello.
Say hi to him. Oh, say hello.
He and I were on this commission years ago together. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, thank you. We'll close the public comment off then and bring it back. I guess no further actions required at this time. We'll just wait for the next presentation on this and hope that the hearing out there goes well and they treat you well. They like what you're doing or whatever.
We'll find out.
Yeah. Okay. I believe that concludes any action we have today. Oh. We're adjourned.